Gavel it in. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call our regular meeting to order at 4:31 p.m. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin with the adoption of the April 5th, 2023 regular governing board meeting agenda. Are there any?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Yes. And is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Next, Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Moreland.
No, it's Ms. Hanberry.
Ms. Hanberry, okay. Do I have someone? Oh, Ms. Hanberry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And now let's have a moment of silence. Flip the page. Yep. Good. Okay, members, item number 5. Discussion and consideration of approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting held on March 8th, 2023, and special meeting held on March 23rd, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I had some corrections to the minutes.
Okay, please proceed, Mr. Straka.
So on page 6, my motion wasn't complete. I had this printed out for my motion, so can I give this to Louisa? That was the motion where I said that I laid out where each half would be paid. It was a flat across the board 5,000 raise. You had to be hired December 1st. We prorated the FTE, only employees, not contractors, and doesn't apply to stipends. And then it also had the market adjustments. And then my question would be for Mr. Ramirez at the bottom of page 6 and start at page 7. Was your because you said you were building on my motion, did your motion also include these items outside of the dollar adjustments? Because they were also not in the minutes.
Okay, let's do, Mr. Straka, let's take the first item. Do you want to provide that document to Ms. Brown? So she has that.
This had the aviation, all the overtime authorized by HR. So forth.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Straka. Mr. Ramirez, please proceed.
Yes, that's correct. I was building on, basically the only thing I was doing is changing the dollar amounts as shown here in the minutes from 3,000 to 5,000 for the hourly employees and then the increase to the 7,000 for the contract employees.
Okay.
Plus the market adjustment for those specified there.
Okay. Okay, was that clear, Ms. Brown, for you?
Yeah, I will review the meeting prior, because I was not involved in that meeting,
Yeah.
and then I will go ahead and update to.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other adjustments or considerations for the minutes? If
Just real quick on page 8, the motion I made was to a 4.25% and 4.25%. I think because we were in the motion, or the topic was the employee retention resolution number 2, I never mentioned in the resolution, but that was the item we were working on.
Okay.
So we shouldn't mention that I had employee bonus resolution number 2.
Number
I
2.
The specific was that 4 1/4, following the legislature, and then a 7-day signing period to earn that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Straka. Any other revisions or changes?
I
Ms.
just have
Bliss?
a few questions or remarks
What-
that I want to make to clarify.
Are they remarks or corrections?
They're not corrections, no.
Okay, so let's take, thank you for that. Let's take, I need a motion first to approve as with the amended changes.
I'll move we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, now discussion. You have comments?
All right. Chairman Pigarelli, let's see here. On the fifth motion where Juan Ramirez made a motion to approve, it's on page 7, at the bottom. So we changed the nursing range from 80,000 to 100,000, aviation and law and public safety to 68,000 to 88,000. That is, the approved hiring range is the same as we did above, correct? And the salary adjustments, when does that pay out? Does that pay out this year?
Is it, I guess that's a question. Dr. Erb, for clarification, would you come to the podium? And again, we don't want to get into detail. This is approval of the minutes. So I want to just, I don't mind the clarification.
So, Chairman Pingarelli, can you repeat where page you're on?
Is page 7.
Okay. What was on 6?
So my question is just, when does that begin to pay out? And is that only for 1 year or continual, permanent?
So right now, with the 80 to 100,000, right now for that compensation for a nursing instructor, right now our range is 65 to 90. So if we hired a new nurse right now, she would fit in, or he would fit into our range, 80,000, 85, we can go to 90. And so I don't know if we would hire somebody at 100,000, but the range for the nursing and all instructors is 65 to 90,000.
And in this, it is 80,000 to 100,000 is what we changed the range to, for nursing.
We did for everyone, yes.
Okay, all right. And then one other question, for the retention bonus, it is only for 1 year.
Currently in the resolution, it's the 4.25 if they sign their contract now, and 4.25, and yes, we'll be back here discussing salary and benefits for future.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Erb. Any other comments or questions regarding the minutes before? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So moved.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I also move that we approve the minutes as presented for the special meeting on March 23rd.
Okay. And is there a second? Okay. So a motion made by Mr. Straka and a second by, who was first? I'll say Ms. Blizzard. Okay. And so any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the special meeting held on March 23rd, 2023, indicate Those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Item number 6, summary of current events. Dr. Spurgeon.
Thank you, Chairman Pingarelli. Just a few things that have happened since we last met. We gave a tour to Ms. Teddy Todd, who is a former CTE professional, used to work in Ohio. She came in to see how Arizona does CTE here, and so she visited the Northwest campus and had a great visit, and got a real sense for how CTE is done here in Arizona, which was fantastic. Secondarily, we had Superintendent Tom Horn and his leadership team came and visited our Southwest campus. Got a chance to provide about a 30 or 40-minute overview to him and his leadership team, and they walked out of there, I think, with a real good feeling about the work that's being done here at West-MEC. Number 3, we also had a tour of our Southwest campus. Phoenix Union has a facilities project coming up, and they came to take a look at our Southwest campus and some of our facilities to begin making some decisions around things they may want to look at for their future CTE programs. Continue discussions with EMCC and Agua Fria School District about the project behind Estrella Mountain Community College. Very excited about our first annual breakfast for our elementary districts that participate in West-MEC. They came and they presented their best practices for CTE pathways and career exploration, and so we want to continue to see if we can build upon that. One of the things I've asked Mr. Welch to do is to see if there's a way for us to see the students that participate in those STEM activities and career exploration programs. We know which high school they attend, and since we know that, we may be able to see if they make application to West-MEC, and if in fact they are accepted at West-MEC. So we're looking to see what impact those elementary programs might have on students making application and being accepted into our program. So just another piece of evidence to see how well we need to begin to work with our elementary school districts. I don't know if you had a chance to see the City of Surprise State of the City. That was a couple Thursdays ago, and probably one of the best put together videos I've ever seen. Great, they must have been using drones and all kinds of technology, just one of the best presentations for a State of the City that I've ever seen. So I picked up a few little tips and techniques that I know I'm going to talk to Mr. Cook about, some things that I think we might be able to do even better here at West-MEC, and really displaying and showcasing the great work that we do here on our campuses. We got our third quarter data in, and once again, the data is up, attendance is up, academics are up, certifications and credentials are up. And one of the things I think we're really most excited about is out of all of our students, we still have about 560 of our students that have 0 absences. And so we're very excited about the kids that will continue to come in our programs, and when they're showing up every single day, that means things are important to them. So we're very excited about that, to share that this evening. Another thing that I'm excited about is Visions. The National CTE Conference is coming to Phoenix in November, December of 23, and we will be one of the hosts of that conference itself. So we're going to be able to showcase all the work that we do here in Phoenix and West-MEC. We may also be looking for some expertise maybe with ACA and some other things. We just had that conversation today. We do know that we're going to be doing a tour probably of our Southwest campus, and I'm going to get the chance to speak and welcome everyone to Phoenix that Thursday evening, I think the 29th of November. So it's going to be a huge event, but I think it's probably going to be one of the largest attended Visions conferences they've ever had. And so we're really going to play that up well and really showcase the work that we do here at West-MEC.
Will we get to do site visits where they come maybe see our Southwest campus?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would encourage you, even if we get everybody to come, we can post a meeting and have everyone come, but we know it's going to be the 29th of November. Probably sometime they'll gather at the convention center and then they'll be bussed over. We'll probably do a quick overview, then do a tour, and then probably do a working lunch with a panel, whether that's West-MEC folks, business and industry, and potentially some students on the panel as well to talk about the great things for CTE for West-MEC. I also want to remind you, I don't know if we've sent the email out yet or not, but we do have a tremendous PD day this Friday the 7th at Northwest Campus starting at 8 o'clock. And you've been through all of our campuses. You've seen the career tree, the pathways we've been working on. This work is going to be taking those career trees to the next level, 2.0, so we can really start putting together some pathways and information so that parents and guardians can make even better decisions from the very beginning to know if we make this decision, this career pathway, where will it lead for them going through West-MEC, maybe matriculating on to Maricopa County and onto a 4-year college university, and what are those business and industry where they can use those credentials and come out and work right now in that geographic footprint, because proximity matters, where you live matters in the valley. And so we're going to try to help parents and guardians and also our staff really better articulate and expand those career trees in all of our programs. And then lastly, we had one of our leadership team members who's going to be recognized on Friday with an award. So let me read this to you. It says, a wise person once said, a leader is someone with clear, convincing, and inspirational goals, coupled with the strength to carry them out. Tracy Rockwell is a determined leader who leads school district officials. With her work at Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools as an interim business manager, Tracy works effortlessly to help districts who are in need. She does it with a smile. It can be a challenge working in public education with strict rules. This doesn't scare her. She continues to implement best practices to help them succeed. Now working at West-MEC, she has come in effortlessly helping implement new best practices and training for staff to ensure that they have the tools to stay in compliance. It takes a special person to give as much as she does. She's a strong leader and a mentor, and she deserves the AASBO Best Practices Award of 2023. And I want to say congratulations to Tracy Rockwell. And that this award application was submitted by her business office in recognition of her great work coming in, even in the short period of time that she's been here. So just want to say congratulations to Ms. Rockwell for her great award.
Very good.
That's all I have, sir.
Very good. Dr. Spurgeon, thank you for the excellent report.
You're welcome.
Members, any questions for Dr. Spurgeon? Okay.
Dr. Spurgeon, so when we do these, when these big events like the CT conference comes out, would it be, will we be able as a board be able to attend those with you as a group?
Yes, sir.
As a leadership group?
Yes, sir. And I'll keep you up to date on the dates and the activities that are going on.
So I would encourage that, you know, so we can see how people respond to our programs and whether or not we're being impactful.
That's a very good point, or a very good discussion, Mr. Garcia. We as a board just need to let Ms. Brown know that we're going to be at the event, because if we're more than 3, then we're, then we have to give notice.
Even 3 can be determined as a subcommittee, so.
That's true, yeah. So it's better just to let Ms. Brown know that you're going to attend.
Yeah, and it probably would even be good for board members to start even going to some of the conferences that other staff go to as well, but only, rotate one at a time.
1 or
because
2.
You don't want 5 of us going to Fargo, North Dakota, especially in
Right.
February.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Yeah,
So
it's gonna be a little
probably,
cold.
the rule is 3 because there's no quorum, but probably best practices is no more than 2 without special considerations.
Chairman Pingerelli.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to mention, Mr. Garcia, is you don't have to be a member to attend the conference, and we're hoping maybe we can generate some excitement around from the business industry folks, even folks from ACA to attend the conference. It may not have to be for the whole time, but we think it might be good to, it's a good opportunity to build those relationships and find out kind of what's happening in other parts of the country, and so we're going to encourage
Business
that.
sense, we could talk about that elsewhere, but for the board, I would love to be part of it, representing West-MEC if that's okay with you, Chair.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Could I just add to Dr. Spurgeon's Southwest tour?
Please.
Just 2 quick things. It was good to hear Superintendent Horn said, hey, I think you're spending money wisely. So that was always good to hear because he's a bit of a conservative. And then the other thing on the tour that stuck out to me is, I believe it's the coding instructor, the cybersecurity instructor has the students, when they get a certification, they get their picture on this wall. And when the one student came out, I think his name was Jordan, was talking about it, such joy to point to, hey, I'm on the wall. And they only get to change their picture when they get another certification.
Yes.
So I think, it seems like something simple, but boy, is it driving the students their certification and everything. So that was really a cool thing to see.
It was.
And boy, if we can get that to other campuses, the thrill of, it's really simple, such a simple idea.
Everybody loves their name. It's the most beautiful sound to your ears, and everybody loves to see their picture. I mean, it's an accomplishment. It really is.
That was all I had.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any announcements from governing board? Anything? Events, anything? Okay, I'll make a couple of brief mentions. One, I also serve on the Grand Canyon University Scientific Advisory Board. I've been doing that, I think, for almost 5 years now. And we had our biannual meeting on Monday. They are adding a lot of, or a number of new programs. Most notably are a couple of laboratory programs with certifications. So, leading that effort is the Associate Dean, Dr. John Valla, and both my wife and I work at Grand Canyon. I work part-time, she's full-time. Another event is we had our my annual astronomy night at GCU, really to foster STEM education and enrichment. I thank Ms. Bosom for coming. We had about 200 people in attendance, along with the Earth and Space Expedition Center. So it was a very good event. And two other quick items. Finally, just want to thank everybody. The last several months I've been pretty sick. So I'm finally feeling better and ready to get very much engaged. And finally, I told Ms. Brown we are going to have a meeting. It will be an open meeting. Obviously, anybody is invited on open meeting law training. I kind of would like to do it virtually if we don't have to discuss it. So I've asked Ms. Brown to reach out to you, late afternoon, sometime during the week in the next month or so, where the governing board and Dr. Spurgeon and any members of his team that can participate. So Ms. Brown will reach out. And that's all I have. Okay. So next item is discussion and consideration of a motion to approve the consent agenda. As board members know, these are usually routine items. But let me first ask before the motion, is there any item a member would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, then I need a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second.
I'll motion to approve.
Okay, Mr. Garcia makes a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and Ms. Bosom seconds. Okay, really no discussion on this item. So I'll call for the question. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None? So moved. Okay. We're speeding right along. Call to the public. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on matters that may be of interest to the board. As specified in our agenda, board members may not discuss the items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. And so, Ms. Brown, is there anyone signed in to speak tonight? No one, okay. So,
Another month like that.
all right, we'll move on. So up, Mr. Williams, giving us the wonderful update of our illustrious legislative and business partnerships. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Pingarelli, members of the board, Superintendent Spurgeon, for the opportunity to provide an update on topics related to business development, legislative affairs. We'll start with legislative update as things at least have the appearance of pacing at a little more leisurely pace as committees wrap up, with the exception, I think, of appropriations tomorrow. But rest assured, there's many conversations still occurring, and we'll see some floor activity. But that being said, really, anything that didn't advance through those hearing processes has effectively become inactive unless they resurface as a part of an amendment, or if there's dollars associated with it, part of the budget negotiations, or in some cases, part of a striker bill where they kind of delete the text of the original bill and replace it with new language reflecting the measure. So really at this point, we do wait and kind of see and hope for the framework of a budget deal to take shape. But I think it will prove to be still much session ahead of us. So we'll see how that plays out. I just wanted to follow up on a couple bills that I mentioned last time. One was Senate Bill 1272. That did, and that's one of those bills that looks to be effectively inactive at this point. That didn't get heard in committee, and that's the CTED bill that provided some additional provisions around fourth-year funding for both in-demand regional programs as well as the delayed payment to the 40th day of the junior year for ninth graders. Really at the onset and ahead of this legislative session, the CTED community really felt like this was a good year to build relationships. We've got a lot of new faces at the Capitol. Maybe not go with any big asks of the legislature. And I think that still is sound advice. So I think as we look at the rest of this legislative session, there's a lot getting figured out with state leadership, the executive, and the both chambers of the legislature. I think there's a lot of feeling there that not a desire, there's not an appetite to commit to ongoing funding commitments out of this legislative cycle. So I think we live to see another day, maybe approach that in a future legislative session because it is important. It provides access, increased access to career and technical education, which we know is valuable. And it's a good return on that investment, but I don't know that this is the year to push that one through. House Bill 2525 seems to be tracking towards, well, actually it has passed out of both the House and Senate. And that, remember, is the one that would allow a salon or shop owner to employ an unlicensed individual if they participated in a statewide inspection program. That is passed out of both chambers and is with the governor for action now. So we'll see what happens there. West-MEC was not in support of that bill, felt that it would undermine the credentials provided by our programs. But we'll wait and see what happens. And if needed, if there's impact to our hours requirements for some of our training programs, we'll make those adjustments, but we believe will continue to be an attractive pathway for students wanting to pursue that industry. Business development, just a couple of items. I had the privilege last week, I really had like a living history lesson over the past couple weeks, and some of it I'm embarrassed as an Arizona native that I didn't know the history behind this, but Second Lieutenant Frank Luke Jr., namesake of Luke Air Force Base, graduate of Phoenix High School back in 1917, I believe, enlisted in the Air Force and quickly became a fighter pilot and was killed, shot down over France in action by the Germans, September 29th, 1918. And that's the namesake of Luke Air Force Base. And I did not know that, and I did also not know that is the memorial statue that I pass every time I walk onto the state capitol grounds. So look for his statue out front and think of that. Look him up. It's really a remarkable story of his year and a half of service that earned him the namesake of Luke Air Force Base. But participated in their educator immersion program. So with their with Brigadier General Rushoff, who is the commander of the 56th Fighter Wing out at Luke Air Force Base, spent the whole time with our group. We got to go through and meet the maintenance group, medical group, mission support group, community initiatives team, and really see that there's not a program at West-MEC that doesn't have some pathway or alignment with the military, and specifically here in our backyard, Luke Air Force Base. So it operates as a city within a city. There's a lot of pathways and need out there, so we look forward to continuing that important partnership with Luke Air Force Base. The second was the city of Surprise, and I always thought people were making it up when they said that they got the name Surprise because the founder said that it would be a surprise if anybody lived there. But they say that's the true story behind it. It was Flora May Statler who founded a square mile of farmland in 1938. The city was later incorporated in 1960 and obviously has grown to well over 1 square mile. I think it's over 100 square miles, with many residents calling that home. Just want to piggyback on what Dr. Spurgeon said. Their State of the City address was phenomenal. The video and the story that it told was really, really well done. And we've got a great relationship with the City of Surprise, their elected officials, as well as city leadership and their economic development team, Ottawa University, who resides within the City of Surprise. We've got some great partnership there. Also just want to touch base, you may have read, ASU West announced a pretty significant expansion of their site in 51st and Thunderbird there, their West Valley location, and really is reflective of the growth and the economic activity happening in the West Valley. They're looking to triple enrollment at that site from the current 5,000 to over 15,000, introducing the School of Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, the School of Interdisciplinary Forensics, and the School of Integrated Engineering, a lot of which will align with the semiconductor industry and cybersecurity and manufacturing that will be in the West Valley. So that's what's happened since the last time we talked. Before we meet again, May 4th, there will be the Superintendent's Institutional Advisory Commission. And we had a very successful meeting back in December, and we are optimistic and confident this will be equally successful. Don't remember that's a cross-section of education, business, economic development, and industry representatives that really help to ensure that West-MEC remains positioned to meet the workforce needs of the West Valley. So we're looking forward to that group getting together. We'll have some discussion around the healthcare workforce landscape. We'll talk about the career trees, and I think many of you have had the chance to see how that looks within our programs, and certainly provide an opportunity to hear their voice through feedback. So with that, I stand for any questions or comments.
Mr. Williams, thank you very much. I have a couple questions, but members, any questions? Okay. Mr. Williams, so our lobbyists, we use tri-advocates, is that correct?
That's correct.
So did they, the 25-25, that went in the House completely partisan. And, you know, I mean, we can say anything, we're elected up here anyway. That went completely partisan because, you know, Repubs look at it as a dereg, but there's a general tendency to do away with a lot of licensure, not only here, but in healthcare. And that kind of frightens me a little bit. So the question is tri-advocates, did they lobby to stop this, or they didn't think it was a big enough deal?
Chairman Pigarelli, thank you for the question. So I don't know that they did not feel it was a big enough deal, but they did seek the position of the CTEDs across Arizona on that. And I'd have to look back on whether or not there was consensus. But the agreement for the lobbyists, because it's a shared lobbyist across the CTEDs, is that there needs to be that consensus in order for them to act on behalf of an initiative or a measure or an opposition.
So there wasn't enough consensus?
I don't recall. Mr. Welch, do you remember if there was or not consensus?
I think your statements have been accurate.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And in the Senate, it actually, it went a little bit more yay, so there was some bipartisanship. Yeah. But I recall about 3 years ago going to, and this was pre-COVID, at the summer conference, an event, and some of the safety issues, I think that we provide tremendous training in these areas. I think that this is risky business. And so I just wanted to bring that to the attention. I think we do a great service for our students, but this one troubled me a little.
Thank you for those comments. And those were the points that we made specific to House Bill 2525 was, and I believe I shared with some of you that, you're handling the mixing of chemicals and product that then you're applying to somebody's skin or scalp. And we believe that it is important that you demonstrate a level of competency before you're allowed to do that. So our belief aligns with your comments today, and we'll see what action happens at the governor's office with that. But yeah, we certainly wouldn't want to see that become a trend, that these licensures or credentials are minimized or gone away with.
Diluted, yes. So thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Question, Chairman Pingerelli.
Yes, Dr. Spring.
Any impact for CTE? I know you were looking at 1,400.
Yes, so it really is a community college district bill. Senate Bill 1400 is community college's non-credit workforce training sponsor, or non-workforce training. So originally, as proposed, it would allow them to count as part of their full-time student enrollment calculation, non-credit workforce training, hours-based training, and it went on to define what the hours-based model was. It was amended, I believe, in committee, I believe in the House Education Committee,
Yes.
to remove that part of it, the non-credit workforce training portion would not be included as part of that calculation. But either way, that's really a community college district funding issue. For CTED's, West-MEC in particular, on the adult programming side, we do not receive that funding, tuition-based.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. So moving on, let's move to item number 10, discussion and consideration of a motion to approve staffing request. Dr. Erb. Oh, I'm sorry, number 10.
Sick leave and vacation leave.
I'm on the, I may have,
Did I flip you too early? Legislative partner,
Okay.
discussion of sick, yeah, number 10.
number 10, okay, I have, apparently my agenda that I have on my computer is a little different. Okay, so number 10, discussion of employee sick leave and vacation leave. Dr. Erb.
Okay, Chairperson Dr. Pingerelli and board members, this item was requested, I believe, from Mr. Straka to have a conversation about our sick leave and vacation leave. So I want to kind of break it into two parts. In your closure that you received, it has our current policy for vacation and for sick leave. Hope you had an opportunity to read through it. All of our employees, whether they're a 10-month, 11 or 12-month, even our part-time, through statutory and legislation, they have to receive sick time based on their FTE. So currently, all of our employees, starting with 12, we obtain 12 sick days a year. And then when, as an employee, they can accrue up to 180. Most districts, some districts are 220, some of them are 260. They're all over the place because they develop their own policy for their own districts. If you have it on page 2, or I'll go to 3 or 4, just to bring to your attention, in our policy on page 4, employees cannot go if they have accumulated, let's say, 75 days. If an employee has accumulated 75 days, then they could ask for an incentive pay for payment of their sick days on a yearly basis. So on page 4, it says an employee in A, more days accumulated, may request payment yearly up to 10 years at the current rate, provided the request is in writing. Employee may request incentive pay for more than 10 days if it goes to the superintendent. Incentive pay for used sick leave will be made within 2 pay days. An employee who breaks the contract and leaves without notice will forfeit his incentive pay and sick leave. On page 5, an employee who is released from the superintendent or the board will forfeit all sick time payout. And then on E, upon leaving the district 1 to 4 years, this policy was changed in 2016, when at that time we paid out sick leave after 1 year. Most districts are 5, 10, and some are even 15 years. The board at that time approved this schedule, 1 to 4 years. If they retire or leave, they would be paid out for their sick leave from 5 to 9 years at 50% of their daily rate, 10 to 14 years, 75% of their daily rate, and 15 years, they get 100% of their daily rate. So I want to pause there before we get into vacation, that's sick leave, and have some discussion, and I'll open it up, Dr. Pingarelli, to
Yeah.
Mr. Straka or board members.
Members, any discussion questions for Dr. Erb?
If nobody else has anything, I'll go. Go ahead. So,
You know, is this consistent with the other school boards, with the other schools, like high schools and?
Great question, Mr. Garcia. Some districts do have incentive pay for sick leave, or they'll pay it out, so they don't have to pay the larger salary at the end of the year. But I couldn't tell you right now how many of them do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia.
I just, number 2,
Which page?
page 2.
Okay.
For earned paid sick time of 3 or more days, an employer may require reasonable documentation. I would encourage us to change that to shall. And the only reason I would do that is we put ourselves in a situation where, hey, I asked for it for a guy over 40, but I didn't ask for it for someone who was 23. I've now discriminated against somebody over 40, which is a protected class. So we should just be consistent and do it all the same.
Okay.
And then, the compensation accumulated sick leave, when they have more than 55 days, we can allow them to buy it out. And I feel like this is setting up employees for failure. Specifically, if you have a medical issue where you're out for FMLA for 12 weeks, that's 60 days. Usually when you have a medical issue, you've used sick time before you hit those 60 days. So what we're doing is we're allowing the employees to put themselves in a situation where they have a major medical crisis, and now at the end of their sick leave, they're gonna have a financial crisis because they're not gonna get paid because they've run out of sick time. So I would say that, we allow up to 180 days accumulated. That's 15 years to get there. Maybe we just take out the compensation because it's great to allow employees to buy it out, but if they have a medical emergency where they have to take care of a family member, the last thing they need is to not be able to get paid in that time frame. And so I just think it's in the employee's best interest not to do that.
And Mr. Straka, what, does that comport with industry standards, or can you?
So, in my experience, even when I left the state of Arizona, I was there 5 years, I didn't get any sick time buyout. The only time you got sick time buyout with the state is if you retire. In private industry, you never got sick time buyout. I left something like 1,600, or it was 6 months of sick time at American Express when I retired.
Okay.
But I'm not saying to change the schedule. I think that's something that we would need more study into. But my concern is employees need to have that sick time if they have a major medical issue. And so my motion would be to change may to shall and remove the paragraph at the bottom of page 4.
Members, any further discussion,
What
comments?
section is that again?
It's on page 4. It says compensation accumulated sick leave.
Compensation for unused.
Where sick leave, you can ask for it to be when it's over 55 days, 10 days a year.
Well, you're allowed to sell 10 days if you have accumulated more than 55.
Right. But then if you sell it down to 55 and you have a major medical event, you're gonna run out of sick time.
Yeah, but I think that's more of a personal choice. Each person can decide how to use their sick time, if they want to cash it out or leave it there in case, like you said, of an unexpected emergency.
I've never, the sick time is meant to take care of people when they're sick.
Yeah.
And to sell it back, we're just creating a situation where they're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't want our employees to get sick, but the last thing I want them to do is to run out of sick time.
To incentivize them to cash
Right,
out
to
I'll come to you, Dr.
incentivize them
Spurgeon.
to then, and as you get older, you're more likely to have a major medical event, that's where you've built up your sick time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a benefit, the ability to cash out sick time. I've never had an employer give me that option, just like yourself. I've only had the option of cashing out vacation time, but not sick time. So,
Dr. Spurgeon.
Mr. Strago, would it be best if we move that number 55 up to say 70 and they could cash in 10 and keep the 60, which would still meet the 12 weeks of leave requirement that you suggested?
It would probably meet my concern is it's like 12 weeks is 60, but when you're sick and you're out for 12 weeks, you've had days prior to that, so you've used some up, and I would think long-term, people can make is it every year you can make an FMLA request?
You have to be employed here a year. You can do multiple, it's not one a year.
So you could do them back to back?
As long as they've been employed with West-MEC for a year, and they have time. And if they don't have time, they go on an unpaid leave.
But their job is protected with it?
Yes.
Their job is protected, that's what
Okay.
FMLA is.
Yes.
But then, you're saying if they have a major medical event that takes more than 12 weeks, they could be 24 weeks,
As long as they have sick leave.
which is 120 days. So, I mean, a horrible situation, your spouse is fighting cancer, you have to go back to work because you're out of sick time. Do we want to do that to employees?
So, Dr. Pringarelli, a couple notes that since Mr. Garcia asked the question, I can look at what other districts do to bring some comparison. This isn't an approval item tonight. And I could also check in to see if in the industries, what their practices are. If that's what the board wants me to do or to obtain more information. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Members?
yes, I would like that.
I think that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think that puts this one
To bed?
to bed for now. So I don't think we have to officially table it. Is that correct, Ms. Brown? Okay. Okay. So any other questions on this before moving on? Okay. The next item,
Dr.
Yes.
Pringarelli, we do have vacation leave. I wanted to
Oh.
split them into sick
Yep.
leave and then
yeah,
vacation.
vacation, I'm sorry. Okay, under this item, correct.
Okay, so on the vacation leave here, you see the 1 to 4 years, our employees can obtain 12-month employees. It's all based on your FTE, can get 2 weeks. 5 to 9 years employed at West-MEC, you get 3 weeks. And 10 years plus, you receive 20 days or 4 weeks of vacation. Similar here, when you reach the 40, that's as many as you could obtain. Once you get to the 40 and you start a new year, and let's just say I'm a 12-month employee and I have 4 weeks of vacation. In our policy, the way it's written here, you have to use 10 of them, and then you can be paid for 10 of them. But you can't go below the 40, and if you got 3 weeks, you got 15 days, you can use 7.5 of those days, and you can get paid for 7.5. If you have 10, you use 5, and you can be paid for 5. So that's on page 6 and 7. That's the summary of the sick leave, vacation leave, how we currently practice it here at West-MEC. Most districts, I believe, are around 40 days of vacation that you can obtain. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Pringarelli for
Okay.
board discussion.
Thank you, Doctor. Members, questions, comments?
Chairman, yes, I have a question I'd like to ask Dr. Erb or clarification. I was reviewing this document and I was a little confused is there the ability to roll over hours? I wasn't clear on that. from the
Up to
document.
40?
40
You
days.
can roll over up to 40 days to your next contract year?
Yes, every year you get, once you get to 40, you can't obtain more than 40 in a bucket or in a year, or the total that you have. Once you get to the 40, whether you're a 2-week employee or 2-year employer, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, once you get there, you have to use half of your vacation. You can use all of it, and you can go below 40, but you can't carry more than 40. So at any one time, you can't have more than 40 in the bucket.
Yes.
And so if they're above 40 and they get 20 for the year, if they don't use any portion of those 20,
They get paid for 10.
but they would lose that. They would lose them if they didn't either use them or get paid for the half.
Yeah, they get paid for half, they'll lose the other 10 if they don't use it.
Let me see if I get this, if I follow you. So, okay, last year, let's say I was able to roll over 40 days from last year to this year. And now this year, I am in the 10-day category. I have my 40 from last year, and now I'm able to accumulate an additional 10 years, but before the end of the year, 10 days.
You're right.
But before the end of this next year, I obviously can't carry over 50, so I can cash out 5 days,
5 days.
and the other 5, either I use them or I lose them.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and I can continue carrying over the 40 days. Okay, got it.
And so, what I think is carrying over vacation is just bad for a couple of reasons. I've always been in a use or lose. And I understand maybe carrying over 40 hours. But there's benefits to vacation. I mean, if you go out to the internet, Inc. magazine, using vacation increases your productivity. I can tell you anytime I would be out, so at American Express, I would be out somewhere from December 8th through the end of the year to use or lose my vacation. But you come back refreshed and recharged and ready to work. And the other thing is, when you've been in a job longer, it also avoids burnout. And so one of the things we're doing is we want to talk about retention. Allowing people to sell out vacation is going to lead to burnout, and that's another reason they would leave. But go out there and look, there's, others than productivity, vacation improves mental health, and it improves job satisfaction. So allowing employees to just carry 40 hours and not take that time, if you've been here 15 years and you're getting 20 days a year, you need to take that to get recharged. I've never been in an environment where it hasn't been use or lose. That's how the private sector works. I think at the state we could carry 160 hours when I was there, but that's the only place I ever could carry over vacation. And they didn't buy ours out. If you were over 160 hours, you lost it.
Vice Chairman Straka, just clarification, I think, were you referring to 40 hours or 40 days? Because
Well, I would adjust that to 40 hours.
Rather than
Because 40
days.
hours is enough you might have a week planned the first week of the new year, but to carry forward 8 weeks, and the other thing is it becomes a financial liability. Because the other thing that happens is, any financial advisor will tell you, if you're running a company, you don't let people carry forward vacation, because every time you give a raise, that liability now has a raise, and you start to carry forward a higher liability of all your carrying hours. And that's one of the reasons most companies don't allow you to carry them forward.
I really don't care, sorry, Mr. Stark, for the rollover of 40 days. It seems, I've never heard of anything like that before. When I used to work at Honeywell, we were able to buy vacation, at least like up to a week.
Yeah, we could buy a week too.
And I always opted for that. Because you're right, vacation is to, recoup and come back a refreshed employee.
And then the other thing is, everybody has family. if you're working here and not taking your vacation, we're not giving a good balance. And that's just not good either. So there's a lot of reasons. I would say, let's have the staff take the vacation that's earned. It's meant to be a reward, time off, enjoy your family, get refreshed, be more productive. But that would be my thought. And I would reduce it to 40 hours carryover. I think we talked one time, and you said everywhere you've been, it's a 40-hour carryover, not a 40-day. So those are all things that I think we should revisit. Yes, oh, sorry.
Yes.
So the one recommendation I would make, and I've been through this multiple times before in other districts, is there's always a grandfather clause in so that we don't hurt those that have already accumulated days. It's always been something we started with new employees moving forward. And so I would just throw that out as a consideration should the board choose to make any modifications to any of the proposals presented.
Mr. Chair, so I would just say that I don't advocate taking away someone's flexibility to make their own decisions as adults of what they do with their PTO. I know working myself at the nuclear power plant, when we could cash out of ours, that was a benefit if you had like a bill or something that was pending that you just couldn't get ahead, maybe some debt, and you could cash in it's just another pot of money you can cash in on. You would eliminate your PTO, but that's a decision that you make as an adult. Trying to make an adult's decision for them, to me, I always caution against that because, flexibility, you don't live someone else's lives. Not everybody has a ton of money sitting aside. Some people are driving cars that break, or the air condition goes out, or a kid gets hurt, or, there's a numerous amount of things. So I just caution that we maybe stay in that flexibility range to let adults make adult decisions and not try to center ourselves where we're making decisions for them.
And Dr. Fingarelli, I would probably echo what Dr. Spurgeon stated. If we're going to, we probably should grandfather him in, or we need to make a decision. If we're gonna change that policy in July, are we gonna pay off all of our employees at their current daily rate for the 40 days they already have in their bucket? That liability, I don't know what the cost would be right now. So if we wanted everybody to start earning, but you can't carry over, then we have that 40 days that are sitting in a bucket where grandfather and them would be the best recommendation that I would say. It's not a voting item tonight, but if you're gonna start with no more than 40 hours or 20 hours, we can start it with new employees, but what about those that have been here for 10, 15 years?
I would think, we would have to gradually work it in. It's like if you're carrying 40 days over July 1st, then maybe next year you only carry 20 days over, and then the following year you only carry 5 days over, because to have someone out for 8 weeks, plus the 4 weeks they earn, they're out 3 months, plus 24 holidays, and say they're out for 12 days, they're out for 6 months just trying to burn out their vacation.
Right, and I don't think using 20 days and burning them down would be good because they're earning the 20 days, and then you're saying you gotta take all 20, can't carry over more than that many hours, then you're gonna have to use your other vacation days within that time, or grandfather them in, or pay them out. So if you want everybody to go down to zero, whatever they earn that year, they can't carry over a certain amount, then we have to decide what we're gonna do with our current employees that have 35 and 40, or at least reach the 40 level.
So Dr. Erb, maybe, since this is only a discussion item, maybe you could bring back that liability factor.
Okay.
And also, in considering a grandfather, maybe some sort of stepladder where it's, not in perpetuity, at least as one option. I'd like to see that.
Okay. Maybe if you could just bring back, hey, how many employees are between 30 and 40 days? How many are 20 to 30? How many are 10 to 20?
I already have that.
That would be very good. Okay.
Because 30 to 40 is the ones that would be the biggest impact.
I do know, being now retired, but in my past corporate jobs, and I see my spouse at Grand Canyon, they're very strict on what you have to use it or lose it, and there's really very strong stipulations on that. Now, it's a much larger organization and there are other factors, but, okay, good discussion. Any other questions, members? Let us move on. So, Dr. Herb, you're gonna bring that back as a report to the board members?
Yes.
You know, okay.
And we can place it on the agenda for our next meeting if that's what the board's pleasure is.
Dr. Really, can I get a clarification, Mr. Straka, do you want total totals, or do you just want to know the number of people inside of each one of those
I would
categories?
say the number of people and then probably the liability.
Because, yeah, because, it'll be different for each person's salary, because it'll be a per day,
Yeah,
or
but
per
if you
diem per
could
day.
say, hey, 30 to 40, there's X number of people, and the liability is X dollars. I just, or whatever's easiest for Dr. Herb to do, I don't wanna, the easiest way to bring it forward.
We have it broken out by vacation and by sick leave. All we'd have to do is find the liabilities, how long they've been here, and what their current salary is. So we can do that.
Just want to double check, make sure you want those totals, because if not, you get that information, it wouldn't be helpful, so.
Well, if you get the detail, you can always total it up on Excel. And you know I do love Excel.
I know. Yes, you do. A couple that do.
All right, very good. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to item 11, since now I can count. Discussion and consideration of a motion to approve staffing request. Dr. Erb.
Okay, we have 4 positions with job descriptions that have been provided to the governing board. Dr. Spurgeon and our leadership team have reviewed these 4. He's had follow-up discussions with Stephen and IT, which are 2 of the positions on here. We believe that they're vital to the growth of West-MEC, especially with the new programs that are coming forward, and also with IT for data mining that needs to be records and history that'll even push West-MEC forward faster with data, because everyone's asking for data. But if you have questions on any of these 4, the nursing program coordinator is going to be shared with 3 different districts. It won't just be for West-MEC, it'll be for the Northwest campus, the Southwest campus, all the medical assisting, along with Estrella Community College and York? Dysart. So it'll be a 3-way partnership. And then the campus business support clerks, Mrs. Rockwell has come in and visited each of the campuses and believe we need to have a .49 or another part-time employee for all of the business functions that are taking place on our campuses. But if you have questions about any of these, George Gerardo's here for IT, and Stephen can answer the questions for you on the data technician and the research program. If you don't have any questions, then administration recommends approval.
So is the data technician more of a statistician, or what kind of thing will they be, what kind of reports will they be doing, how much data will they be moving?
The data position that we are requesting would be working closely with Diane Parsons, who has been doing a majority of the data by hand. So it could be some data analytics, but for the most part, it would be the ability to work with student data that helps drive the district, and other data sets that we have spent a lot of labor and time, especially when we prepare for cognitive or COE type data. But moreover, in the grander scheme of what our data is as you know, we at West-MEC have 20 plus years of data. And in all that time frame, we've had many different silos putting together the data and not really storing it very well, having good naming conventions. And so this would allow us to have 1 or possible 2 interfaces where anyone could query the data as needed for whatever the given need for that data is.
Writing code, a little bit about writing code.
Yeah, so some of that data too would be powered by such as Power BI, which is backed by Microsoft. It would also incorporate pulling data or importing, extracting data from Focus, which is our new student information system. So that is some of the technologies that we are currently looking at. As a group, we would be able to meet and collaborate on which would be the best data platform for the data that we need. So that is going to be part of the role of that data technician as well.
So it's building like a database, one centralized database.
Correct, but it could conceivably be two databases, and that database could be a SQL-driven database, a Power BI-driven database.
I think from the job market, if you have SQL-driven, there's more data analysts using SQL or something similar.
Right, and that would also be dependent on where the data is coming from and how it would be extracted.
And then just adding these new positions, Dr. Erb, how do we come to it? Like, how much overtime has been generated that we've determined we now need these positions? Or what's the driving metrics that we use to get to here?
I think the driver is the amount of work that Diane is doing in her department of producing information, not just for Dr. Spurgeon, but for the organization.
I'm sorry, I meant like just stepping back, not just that one position, but all four of these positions. What are the metrics that we use to determine we need another position?
Well, I would say for the nursing program coordinator, the data is we can't find an individual. We had 5 different individuals at the Northwest campus doing this program. And in growing programs, we have 5, 6, 7 different medical assisting partnering with the other. The demand for partnerships with the medical centers that are opening up and the number of students that we have in our program that need internships to get their clinicals done and to get their certificate, that's one of the drivers presently. Finding one person to do that coordination in alignment with the 3 districts that are participating would be a great benefit to West-MEC. For the data research and program development, Stephen would have a better idea of the measurement of what we're doing with Diane and her workload and what she's doing. She's a salaried employee.
But is she working 40 to 50 hours, or is she working 50 to 60 hours? I mean, at some point you have to say, hey, I don't want there's a work-life balance, and, you know, occasionally as salaried, yes, I do work more than 40 hours, but then it shouldn't be the routine.
Okay, well, she's here 7:30 in the morning and leaves at 5:30 every day, so.
Chairperson Pigarelli, Mr. Streka, you're absolutely right. You're hitting it on the head. It's really looking at the positions, each of the positions, the data position that George just spoke of, and the research position are with, the work is being distributed among salaried people right now. So when we're talking about the data position, Diane Parsons is doing the bulk of it. In addition, George has some staff doing it. Our SIS office, Naomi and Jolene are doing some of it. Our campuses are doing it, as well as our teachers requesting data. Certification tracking is a big one. This board has asked for sometimes like work-based learning. What are the hours of work-based learning? How many work-based learning opportunities do we have? And right now that's being housed with, each teacher has a spreadsheet, whether that be Excel or Google. And so it's reaching out to them, but it's not all in one place. So this would centralize that into one place and really streamline our efficiencies. Same with the research position. As we continue to grow, that's being handled by CNI, predominantly Laura Jaime, who's here. Both her and Diane are consistently working over 40 hours a week, just keeping up with this district's growth.
And then the last one, the 2 positions.
Part-time positions, imagine if Mrs. Rockwell, she's online, she's visited every one of the campuses, the amount of budget that each of the campuses, the number of programs, each one of them has an individual budget to process and keep track of that with CTSO collection of fundraising and other accounts that are coming in, tax credit. She's gone to every one of the campuses.
Who's doing it now, and how many hours are they working? I just want to make sure that we aren't, putting a position there and, hey, this person has been working full-time, but now they're going to have half a day opened up because we created this new position. It's how do we get to the justification of, I need these positions, because that's the only thing I'm struggling to hear.
Well, so she's online.
Sure. And so currently our office clerks on the campuses are the ones doing a lot of that work, and any one of our principals could speak to that. But as we increase, students on our campus, programs on our campus, that takes them away when they spend the day doing business functions, it takes them away from being there to work with student attendance, answer parent calls, register students, especially this time of year. So that's a really important one. As Dr. Spurgeon mentioned, ESA vouchers, that has, as we're very excited to welcome our homeschool and private school families onto campuses, but that has really exploded the number of parents that are opting for that choice. And so we have, where we didn't have any, now we have up to 40 families really working to go through that voucher system, the ADE wallet system. So this person would be able to help with that as well. And of course, Aaron is living this each day.
Yeah, and he has a part-timer that's been working. This would make that person full-time, but he could share with you some of the responsibilities that finance person has, because this person will be doing finance.
Board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I feel pretty strongly about this position moving to a full-time position, and primarily because I split the function between a part-time person and the administrative assistant for the front office. And quite honestly, the administrative assistant does not do any administrative assistant functions. They do budgeting, they do recs, they do track orders, manage a lot of the money. And that's with the addition of the part-time person. Both of those people, especially at my campus, since it's split across 2 entrances, are bombarded constantly with answering attendance calls, greeting guests at the front of the office, which has resulted in money count errors for deposits, and just a whole string of issues when it comes to relating money back into the business office. And we don't want errors with our money, and that's where we're putting those people in the position of having. So from my perspective, having a full-time person whose function is to operate with the money on the campus to make sure that we have clean systems, it's imperative, because we're overtasking these people. As far as overtime, we don't pay these people overtime, but it's at the expense of the other functions and duties, which that workload often falls on myself and the other administrators on the campus, which means then we're not being available to be instructional leaders like we need to be. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia. So, question, have we thought about utilizing some of our apprenticeship programs or some of the, I don't want to call it free labor, but other things we can bring in instead of a part-time person that has no charge to the school, like the Skill Bridge program, the military Skill Bridge program, or the state's apprenticeship program, or one of the many programs that we have that don't cost the employers anything. Have we ever thought about using those for our part-time or for additional help rather than creating a position?
I don't believe in that we have.
I think I would, that's kind of what I was thinking is, a lot of things I'm hearing, registration, this should be self-serve. We shouldn't have a person walking someone through registration. The way most successful businesses are is it's self-serve, it's on their app. And so I know we have an app. We have, like you said, we have coding students. Why don't we have the coding students building a registration app on there? What are the other things? Hey, for paying fees, can we put that on the app for students? And so those are, I think, not something we can solve today, but I think it's a mindset that we need to get into of, hey, we don't keep putting people on stuff. Is this stuff that we can automate and create self-service so that our staff can do the important things of greeting our guests that come through the door and stuff? Because I think that's kind of what you're thinking too.
Yeah, because the apprenticeship program is skilled labor. The Skill Bridge program is also skilled labor. So these are folks that are accountants right now for the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines that are transitioning back to civilian world. They would be able to walk into an accounting firm and be able to do work immediately. Our apprenticeship programs are a learning program, but some of them do come with skill sets already as well. So you would be getting someone looking for that kind of work. Yeah, stuff like that. Just things that curb the cost of having a new person for a position that someone else can do for that same period of time, but for no cost to the school.
Okay. Really, I think Tracy might have tried to get.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm currently up at a conference, so my connectivity keeps jumping in and out. So I apologize if I'm a little staticky or, I get the weird face that freezes. Those are always at the most inappropriate captures as well, too. So I appreciate and acknowledge the suggestions. I really do. The issue that we have come across, if I can echo off of Dr. Parsons, is we're dealing with FERPA issues with all of our students. And so having the employees do this because they're automatically bonded by our liability coverage where the volunteers would not be. And Mr. Straka, yes, we do have online registration. We do not accept a walk-in at all. All of it is through online. But as it was mentioned, the ESA is a whole new adventure for us. The processing of the electronic payments, through the credit cards and things like that is coming in vast volumes. So the accountability that has been asked of these staff members is taking them away from what their higher duties were. The other thing that we are working with is trying to allow the administrative staff to have the ability to do requisitions and purchase orders and receipting of orders. And in this day and age, for that one FTE to be able to do this, they are having to not complete work on either spectrum because they only have so many hours in the day that they are allowed to work. And so, as Mr. Williams mentioned, Dr. Parsons mentioned, and even Dr. Erb, the district just continues to grow, and having those available staffing resources allows us to provide that stellar customer service to our students, our parents, and any of our community members, making the gifts and donations, tax credit, rental of facilities. We are asking more responsibility and accountability with the handling of the taxpayers' money and the ownership of having their students on campus to a different level. And it is pulling them away from the administrative assistant positions that they were hired to perform.
So, Dr. Erb, Ms. Rockwell, looking at the overall impact on our budget, $350K, if we just take, if you could just disaggregate it for a second, the campus business support clerk, the 2 FTEs for those positions, what does that cost, just separately?
Sure. So with the employer contributions, meaning all of their taxes along with the salary, it's going to be less than $100,000. And the return will be much greater than that.
Okay, for those, however you sort them out, for that 2.0 FTE, it's approximately 100,000.
Correct.
So I don't want to get in the way of moving forward. So I think we should approve these. But by the same thing, I would like to add that I'd like to see a report in 90 days of opportunities for self-service. One of the things that I was surprised, I went to a concert at Footprint Center last week, and they don't take cash. Everything is a debit card. And it's more efficient, surprisingly. Maybe we need to do the same thing. Every student has a debit card. Why are we taking cash? That might be some opportunities, but so I would say let's approve this and move it forward. But I'd like to see a report from staff in 90 days of opportunities to automate and self-service and look at things like, hey, if we were able to get rid of cash at our campuses, what would that do? The money would still be there, but you're not balancing, it would balance for you. So I think, let's think outside of the box, let's move forward with these, but I think what you're saying, let's look at opportunities to take advantage.
So, Dr. Pingarelli to Mr. Straka's comment, and Ms. Rockwell, can you hear me all right? Tracy?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I think what we should do is look at the point of sale training and what we're doing with Focus with point of sale. I think it'll answer a lot of the board's questions, especially Mr. Straka's.
Yes. And I will say that in the tender that we do receive, cash, meaning dollar bills and coin, is vastly minimal. And even writing checks, if anybody still has to reorder checks, that has really dropped off as well too. And so we are seeing a large increase in the credit card processing with the new Focus flexibility that the SysADM, Naomi and Jolene have worked on, along with student services. It has been a remarkable rollout this year. We're very excited about it.
Presentation on that.
So my comments are, I'm also supportive of approving this. I think though, in the future, for future staffing requests, I did appreciate all the job descriptions and everything that was presented, but a little bit more of a written analysis. I mean, not extensive, but a little bit more justification. When we had George come up for IT, it was very clear what he was going to do, and I think that that's kind of what I would like to see, but I'd like to see it on paper.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments,
So I
board
would like to
members?
see how we can utilize these programs that will provide labor at no cost to the school. So I would like to see maybe someone to look at the Skill Bridge program. The state has one, ADOA is part of the program, our DPS is part of the program, Department of Veterans Services has a program, and roughly 90 other companies in Arizona has a Skill Bridge program. And I can explain more on that if the board needs to know more about the Skill Bridge. But you can look it up too, DOD, Department of Defense, Skill Bridge. It's a great benefit to an organization, and it does give service members that transition ability to an organization they're not familiar with in their transition life cycle. So it contributes to our military, and it contributes to the organizations at no cost to the employer. They don't even pay a wage because they're still on active duty when they're doing the internship. So they don't charge the company wages, you don't charge the company benefits or anything like that. They're just TAD to your place of work.
And we've used AmeriCorps for a couple of years, but we only have to contribute about $9,000 towards that.
Military costs nothing.
Okay.
I can give you more on that too.
All over that.
Dr. Spurgeon.
So, and this also falls along the line, I don't know if you made the board aware of the great panel you sat on, a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where this was really discussed about how we could better incorporate the students with special needs and the veterans, and there may have been one other.
Right, the reentry program, the voc rehab program, and then we have the WOTC, the Workforce Opportunity Tax Credit program as well. So there's quite a bit of programs
So,
out there.
yeah, we can talk some more about that, so we kind of define what those areas might look like for us, so.
So if,
Because even 1 or 2 employees would make a huge difference.
And you can do as many skill bridges as you want.
so, members, if there's no further discussion, we would need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I did make a motion, I haven't heard a second, and that
Oh,
was to
you
approve.
did make a motion. Second, okay, so Mr. Straka made a motion to approve the staffing request. Mr. Garcia, second.
It wasn't me, it was
Or Mr. Ramirez, excuse me.
And just for clarity, my motion did include a 90-day report, and I would be open to also adding the
Skill Bridge.
the skill bridges Mr. Garcia talked about. I think there's some opportunity for us, and just bringing it to the table, let's see if we can make it,
Okay.
at least explore it.
Okay. Let's keep our motions really clean. So if you're going to make the motion is to approve this, if there's any amendments or addendums to the motion, restate the motion, Mr. Straka, so that we have it clearly in the,
As I said, to approve these positions, 4 positions as presented, and then we'd like a report in 90 days from administration on what are the opportunities for self-service, where else, what is our low-hanging fruit, and then also, what is our opportunity with Skill Bridge program and maybe some other programs that Mr. Garcia mentioned as well.
okay, very good. And Mr. Ramirez?
Second.
You second, okay. And for this item, Ms. Brown, would you just do a roll call?
Ms. Busam?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Straka?
Aye.
And Dr. Pingerelli.
Aye. So motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I think you're still up, right? So
I'll be here for a while.
maybe we should get you a stool. So item 12 is discussion and consideration of a motion to approve salary adjustments.
Okay, Dr. Pingerelli, Chairperson Pingerelli, and board members, we had lengthy discussion at our last board meeting on salary increases of 7,000 and 5,000 and the 425. We also had discussion about the 7,500 and the 7,500. With approval of the 5 and 7 and the 4.25, we have currently the employees that are on your attachment. I believe there's 15 of them. 16 of them that will, with the increase that they'll receive, they'll be below the starting salary range for their position. So this agenda item provides the board to ask questions, administration, Dr. Spurgeon comes back, and our recommendation is to at least move them to the beginning of the salary schedule. I know the board last time said we don't want anybody that's been here for 2 or 3 years, somebody new coming in and making more of them, more than they are currently. We are in the process of hiring new staff. We've hired 4 instructors in the last week for the new year. But these are current employees, and we have 2 openings in vet assisting. And currently, with the recommendation last week, we have 2 vet assisting instructors that we have to hire. The beginning of the salary range is 65. With the change in the salary ranges, there will be some employees that have been here 3 years, and the new employee will come in right at 65, and they'll probably be less than $1,000 more than them. They're not on this list, but this would take any new hire within these 16 positions that would move them at least to the beginning of the salary range that was approved by the board. So with that, I'll take questions. Dr. Spurgeon can take questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Doctor. For members' questions.
Yes, Dr. Pingerelli, I have a question for Dr. Erb. I just have a question here. For example, let's take the first category, administrative assistants. And the way I understand is there are 4 different administrative assistants there, 1 for CI, 1 human.
There's an office assistant and an administrative assistant.
Okay.
And those 2. These are all administrative assistants currently.
All of these here?
These 4 here, yes.
Yeah, these 4.
Just at the top.
Yes, okay, those 4. So my question is, so you want to move them all to the beginning of the new hiring range? Does that mean then that all 4 of them would be making the same hourly rate?
Correct.
Okay. Was it considered to move them all, to just shift them all based off of the one who's, I think the one that has the greatest variance is the one that's at 33, or there are 2 that are at 33 cents, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that's the greatest,
That's a C and I.
$1.10. Was it considered to just move everybody to look at the one that's the largest variance here, the $1.10, and move everybody over $1.10 so that they maintain that same difference between each other, rather than give them all the same rate?
Well, if we move these 4, they'll all be at the beginning salary range for this position.
Mm-hmm.
So if we move one, then we'd still have three that would not be at the beginning of the salary range for that position.
No, if you move, because I think the recommendation here is moving the first one, moving them over $1.10, the next one 33 cents, and then the third one 16 cents, and then the fourth one 33 cents, right?
Correct.
Why not just move everybody $1.10, shift them over?
That's what the board wants to do. We can.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, I was just clarifying that, so Mr. Ramirez is saying if you give everybody $1.10, that still keeps the gaps between, the equalization of the gaps between where they currently sit right now.
I imagine there's a reason for that difference between each of these individuals, right? They maybe came in at different times or different experience, or, I mean, I don't know. There's gotta be a reason for the differences in rates.
Mr. Struck.
You know, my concern is the same thing I said last month. If we bring everyone to the beginning of the range, the first person we hire is gonna be hired in likely more than them. So it really doesn't solve the problem. But what I did with these, other than there was one I couldn't go back on, I went and looked at our administrative assistants and how they compared in the survey, the salary survey we got last month. And before the raise, our administrative assistants were 9% above market. We just gave them a $5,000 raise and an 8.5% raise. So maybe the solution, so that somebody doesn't come in over them, is let's adjust this range back so that they're in the middle of the range. And so in the example, the first one, the average salary is $23.12. So if we would essentially take $4 off the range, 1961 to 2718, we're still above market by 8% plus the raise, but then they're in the middle of their range. So if we bring someone in, they're likely not to come in at more than they're making. And I went back and I looked at the office assistants, very similar thing. We were 0.5% above market, and we just gave raises. We could do the same thing, a $4 adjustment to the range down. They would be in the middle of the range, and we would be hiring people at below their rate, but we're still above market. IT tech, this survey was 0.5% again, same thing. We could adjust that one down $6, put them in the middle of the range. We're still above market. Facilities management, we were 4% above range. Medical or CI specialist, we were 2% above range before the raises. So my thought is, would it make more sense, instead of keep pushing up and we're already above market, to adjust these so people are in the middle of their range? When we hire someone, they're more than likely to come in under them, and that accomplishes what we don't want to do, is bring someone in equal or higher than them. Do you follow me?
Yes.
The only one I would say is the instructor. You need to move the instructor to 65. Animal care assistant, we didn't have any survey information. I couldn't respond to that one.
Yes.
I would still maintain that we move what's being presented. That's just still my recommendation.
Yeah. I just, help me understand why. We're above market, and we have a duty to the taxpayers. We're above market, and so what we're saying to the taxpayers is, I'm gonna pay additional. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put everybody at the beginning of the range. If we don't hire someone in at that range, they're gonna be hired above them, which was the one thing I said didn't wanna happen last month. And I think somebody said, oh, that's not gonna happen. A month later, here we are having this discussion. I want our staff to be in the middle of the range, and I think it makes more sense to adjust the range that's above market. And then when we hire people, we're still above market, but they're not coming in at what people have come in and put the sweat and tears into.
I guess Dr. Ping, go ahead.
I have a question, Doctor. When you said that you guys had an extensive discussion about this, who was involved in that discussion?
Everybody in leadership, so that would be Stephen, myself, Tracy was there, Dr. Spurgeon, Jared Guy, and Marilyn Baviar.
Okay.
So I guess my question would be,
That, so if that is your, so we have one recommendation from administration. Mr. Strecker, you are making somewhat an alternative proposal. Would you care to make a motion?
so I can make a motion, I have my sheet here, if you want me to read it off. Administrative assistant, I would change the range 1961 to 2718. Office assistant 1818 to 2468. IT tech 1954 to 2754. Facilities maintenance 19 even to 2583. The animal care, we didn't have any survey, so I would move her to the beginning. The medical assisting instructor, I would move them to 65. CNI specialist, I would change the range to 67,931 to 87,161, because that would put these two people right in the middle of the range at an average of 77,931. And then when we hire people, they will be below, they're more than likely to be below, because we are above market. And when I think about this, there's two things I'm trying to balance. We have three sets of stakeholders: students, which this doesn't affect; staff, which this affects, and it affects them two ways. It's their compensation, but it's also new employees. And then finally, the taxpayers. They're our third stakeholder, and so we have a fiduciary duty to properly use our tax dollars. And so if we're above market, instead of paying additional above market, it makes sense to make this change as I recommended. And so that would be my motion.
And that is your motion. And I will second that and then ask for further discussion.
Yeah, I would like to chime in on that. So I would argue there's one that we always seem to miss in all of our discussions, that's industry. So when there's a cap index, a capital investment for a company in Arizona, and if it's $1 billion, that's $1 billion in payroll, $1 billion in construction, $1 billion in resources that's the state's going to absorb. That's why we put money into business attraction. So if we're not going to provide them with attracting the best talent for what they're needing and their skill sets, that goes back to our original discussion of what's vacant, how long it's been vacant. We saw that survey.
But remember, that study we did last month, that included industry salaries and those averages. It wasn't just, and some of them we didn't even have inspectors.
Right, but if you're gonna hit that, if I'm gonna try to entice you to buy something or to go somewhere, and I pay you what everyone else is paying, what's the incentive to bring you over to me?
Well, remember, we're already above range. Like in the first one,
Right.
Before the range, we were 9% above average industry and schools, and we've added $5,000 and 8.5% to these numbers. So they are now 10% plus the 9%. They are more than 25% above market
So I thought
range.
that survey that we saw wasn't conclusive with the market. I think there was some error on that survey. So I didn't bring those notes, but I remember that was some of the discussion, was the validity of that survey and how much it actually captured of the market. So I can tell you that I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I don't have that information in front of me. So that I wouldn't vote on it unless I have it. For that purpose, I do want to stay competitive. So the competitive edge of the school is important, just as important as our ability to, because this is really a conduit to what you're seeing as construction, the golf course across the street, you got a brand new resort being built right across the street. These are capital investments these companies are giving to Arizona. And I can tell you from the other end of it is our talent pool is extremely important and it's volatile right now. And being able to proposition that in such a way that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, there's obviously a balance in there, and I'm not quite sure where that balance is at, to be honest with you. But I think we need more information if we're going to change what we've already agreed to.
Well, Mr. Garcia, I believe your point is very well taken, but I'm going to use the word balance. And I think, the seven of us, the five of us tonight, we are accountable to the taxpayers. we are ultimate, and I understand the balance with industry, but we've had this discussion for over a year, and we did that, we paid a considerable amount of money, right, for that salary survey? It wasn't inexpensive, and there were some gaps. In fact, I think I pointed out some of those gaps. But I think one thing is true, is that, you know, we're doing all these discussions in public. Industry doesn't have to do that, right? They are accountable to their shareholders or their investors. We are accountable to the taxpayers. And I think that we do want to attract the best that we can, but to compete on every level with industry is going to be difficult, particularly, and I think we all recognize that. So, and that's why, after listening to Mr. Straka's discussion and motion, that is why I gave it a second. So I'm just, you know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Fair enough. Vice Chairman Straka, can you go through those ranges again a little slower?
Yep. So, administrative assistant, the median is, or the average is 2312. So I would adjust that to 1961 to 2718. Office assistant, the average is 2155. I would recommend the adjustment 1818 to 2468. IT tech, the average is 2363. I would make that a 1954 to 2754. Facilities maintenance is 19 to 2533, and that average is 2266. Animal care, I would move up because we have no salary or survey information. The instructor, I would move up because there's too many other instructors. A CI specialist, the average is 77,931. If you put them right in the middle, you could make it 67,931 and to 87,161. And if you want my sheet, Ms. Brown.
What was the CNI specialist again? Did you knock $9,000 off of that?
67,931 to 87,161, because we were 2% above market. The average is 77. That puts them right in the middle. So the next one you hire, they're not going to be equal to everybody unless you bring them in the middle of the range. And you still could bring someone in at 87.
You knocked $11,000 off the CNI specialist to 67.
Because that puts them right in the middle.
67,353.
I mean, if you want, we could make it 68. That puts them a little lower than halfway to 88. What I was trying to do is put them in the average in the middle of the range, so that while we're competitive, we're not going to bring someone in equal, or because these employees have invested in West-MEC, I don't want the next employee to come in at the same rate or higher. I don't think that's the right message to our existing employees.
Further discussion, members? Like to move this along? If not, we have a motion by Mr. Straka, a second by myself, and Ms. Brown, if you would do a roll call vote, see where we at.
Ms. Guzzo? Mr. Garcia?
Nay.
Mr. Ramirez?
I'm gonna say no, only because I would have liked a little bit more time, I guess, to go through all the numbers and scenarios here, and I mean, I haven't run through the same calculations that Vice Chairman Straka has, so for that, I'm just gonna go with no for now. With no.
Okay, we have 3 yes votes, or wait a second, sorry.
No, you haven't called
Vice
them.
Straka,
Yes.
and then Dr. Pinero.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 3 yes votes, 2 no votes, motion carries.
Okay. So by your votes of 3 ayes and 2 nays, the motion does carry. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one maybe comment I hear from Mr. Ramirez. These kind of discussions, we need to have administration meet with board members prior to a meeting, because I'm always hearing, I think this is the second month we've heard, hey, we just got this information, I have questions, and we're not getting enough time to answer our questions. And so I think that's something I would reiterate is, Mr. Ramirez, if you could have had time to meet with somebody to ask your questions, I think you could have, but anyways, just
Thank you.
some thought.
Okay. So let's move on to item 13. Discussion and consideration of a motion to approve the continuation of employee stipends. Dr. Berg.
Okay, Dr. Fingerelli, Chairman, and board members. On a yearly basis, we need to have the board approve the stipends that West-MEC provides to employees for those that are new. The 12-month, the 2250 and the 2025, that was implemented back in 2008 because at that time the board had funds, but everybody knows in 2008 the funding for public school districts in the state of Arizona and the downturn of the economy, West-MEC was able to provide a raise, so at that time they called it a quality of life stipend for 12 and 11-month employees. 2 years ago, we stopped doing the 2250 for new employees by vote of the board, but probably our 160 employees, about 150 to 160 currently receive this stipend. The cell phone stipend, we have 56 employees that are exempt employees that have cell phones for the work that they do, and then we have 12 hourly employees that have a cell phone stipend. And there's probably potentially some discussion on cell phones because we included an information to you from our attorney that was requested by the board on overtime for hourly employees. And then the car allowance stipends have been an ongoing for administrative staff. So with that, I will turn it over to questions for myself and Dr. Spartan.
So I just want to add, to give some people some context, what the quality of life was we couldn't give a raise to employees because no one else was giving raises. So the superintendent came and said, hey, a lot of families are having trouble paying for family health care coverage. Let's give them a stipend for health care coverage. That was the intent of this 2250. And then I think last year what we said is if anyone moves over to the family coverage, they would give up this stipend. So I think the one thing we have to, I don't see in here, Dr. Erb, is that anyone who takes the family coverage that we're offering, they would give up the stipend.
Yeah, that would be under the medical part.
Because that wasn't clear. The cell phone is a much more complicated thing for hourly employees. It's just not a new policy. We have to have a system for accurate reporting time. What I would recommend with the cell phone is to eliminate it. Because we're gonna have to get rid of it for hourly employees. When I was at the state got dinged. They used to require us to carry a beeper. And the lawsuit, and it wasn't really a lawsuit, it was a complaint to the Department of Labor. All the hourly employees that were required to carry a pager during their work week, the Department of Labor came in and said, oh, well, you got paid for the 40 hours. The 128 you were required to carry the beeper, you need to get paid for it because you're already over 40 hours, you get time and a half. So every week that you carried the beeper, you got paid 192 hours of pay. So you can multiply that out if we require them to carry it for a year, it's roughly not just the 1 year of pay, but it's another 4.8 years of their pay. So we can't have hourly employees with a stipend because that's an indication we're requiring them to carry a cell phone and to be available. And if they make a complaint, as legal counsel said,
in the end of her memo, remember that the absence of records, the Department of Labor will use the employee's calculation. They always favor the employee. So I hate to take it away from hourly, and then there becomes a division between hourly and salaried employees. We just gave some big raises because of the issue with hourly employees. I would recommend we get rid of the cell phone stipend. And actually, I would also refer to Dr. Spurgeon's contract. When he was hired, we didn't do a cell phone stipend. In fact, he didn't even ask for one. So I think the way the world is moving, it makes sense at this point. And so I would say approve the quality of life for people who are grandfathered in, as long as they don't take the family health care. On leadership, I know there's been discussions in the past. What I would ask, we approve those as well. But what would be helpful on the leadership is on a monthly basis, how many hours are they being driven? Because I know there's been board members in the past that have asked, so could we get once a month for the next 6 months? How many hours, how many miles have they driven? And this specifically, not from their home to the West-MEC location, but from West-MEC location throughout the day, not their time home, because that's not what we cover. Because I think the board needs to be aware of that. There's every year, it seems like, that seems like a lot of money, but if we see the mileage, I think it will answer the question for 6 months.
Thank you, Mr. Streka. So I just want to recap my view on this. So I agree with the quality of life for all employees, with the exception that Mr. Streka pointed out. I also agree with eliminating the cell phone stipend. I think we've reduced this in the past anyway. I'm having trouble, though, with the leadership. Doctor, let me put you on the spot. Yes. Not that you haven't been put on the spot before. You know, what can we say? Let's just say that we're paying an assistant superintendent for human resources $1 a mile. Have you ever traveled, not from your home to West-MEC and back home, but have you ever traveled 7,000 miles for West-MEC?
Visiting campuses on a quarterly basis, going to, like I went to the Northeast, I don't track my numbers. I guess the better one would be Mr. Williams. Technically is where he's driven this year. If he did it hourly, he would make more hourly for reimbursement than what we have here.
I'm not concerned with the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning and for Mr. Williams in government relationships. I would put the caveat, I would like to see it after 6 months. I'm just not sure about the CFO stipend and the assistant superintendent for human resources. I don't see those levels. And I've looked at this in other districts, and this is kind of unusual for a CFO to receive a $7,000. In fact, I've never seen it. Maybe you could point to me where this has occurred.
I believe, I want to say Dicer, I can check and investigate what all the member districts are paying for their CFOs and other staff on a car allowance and bring it back to you. But it's not unusual for member districts or districts that are outside our member districts to pay for a cell phone or for a car allowance.
Are these the same numbers as last year?
They're increased because of under the government relations one and the assistant soup, it's increased.
And what were they?
5.
What is the mileage reimbursement rate?
I think it went to 61
cents, yes.
61 now.
I calculated it.
Tracy, are you on?
Yes, it's actually 66 cents now.
66?
Yes.
Sure will be related.
Yes, Dr. Spurgeon.
Also, just make note of the fact that these stipends, after you take out all the deductions, it's about 50%, 47 to 55% of it's coming out anyway. So it's not really 7,000, it's about probably around more like $3,500 divided by 12 months.
Why is it, because it's an expense of a reimbursement, so it shouldn't have taxes taken out?
It's not a
No,
reimbursement.
it comes out of your salary.
It comes out of your
State
salary.
retirement, we pay for everything.
Everything comes out of that, so it's really not even
Seven,
quite half that.
yeah, 7,000 is 10,606 miles.
Say that again, how much?
$7,000 is at, the
60.
66 is 10,606, and that comes out to 883 miles, which, if you break that down to weeks, it's about 221 miles a week.
How much is it, 3,500 real dollars?
Half of that. So 105 miles a week. Well, I mean, it's still 883 miles a month, 221 miles a week. I can tell you as a realtor, the guy who lives in New River, I am racking up the miles. But of course, everywhere I go, it's 75 to 100 miles.
I will comment that I have asked leadership to attend probably twice as much as what they've done in the past, so that was my rationale.
Well,
for
and this is why-
and increased gas prices.
This is why I asked for the mileage, because it's been a sore point. If we could get a monthly update of each person's mileage, and
Well, or Mr. Strick, or a quarterly or 6. I would be amenable to moving forward with the leadership stipends, but at least a quarterly or a biannual report with actual miles.
Okay.
And I've looked at other districts, and this is not what I'm seeing for certain positions. So,
So we have monthly and quarterly. What's the pleasure?
well,
let's do quarterly. It's just, I worry that if you do quarterly, you're gonna lose track of your mileage by the end of the quarter. But because you wanna keep track of, it's not your home to West-MEC, it's your West-MEC to the Capitol and back, and, but this is why I figured there'd be some discussions, why I asked for it. Maybe they can give it to you monthly and you can just send it to the board quarterly.
quarterly.
Okay.
I just don't want, because I think about Dr. Spurgeon or any of the leadership looking for their mileage in January at the end of March. Good luck. Dr. Spurgeon, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's gonna be a task to track it, so.
Are there not very inexpensive apps that do this for you? So in other words, to and from, and so it's a very easy report to generate for the employee? I mean,
Can they turn off what is mileage and what isn't, because you don't want it to count?
yeah, no, it's, I think you have to plug into the app that this is business related.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's let
Yeah,
Dr.
I
Kerr
mean,
take care of it.
that's a, I mean, I don't wanna get to the, granularity there, but I'm just mentioning, mechanisms to make that easier for the employees.
Okay. Well, it's
that
only
have
for
those types.
positions, so it's not gonna be challenging. We can do it.
Okay.
But before we move on, can I just clarify, quality of life, we're gonna stay with those that are grandfathered in, those that are new, we're not providing that as to any of our new employee. The cell phone stipends, was that for everyone?
Yes.
Or just for the 12 employees that are
I
hourly?
think we should, because it becomes a thing of, hey, you're an hourly employee, you lost your cell phone, I'm a salaried employee, I didn't, and I don't wanna create a division between the two groups. So that's why I would recommend you just remove it, and that's consistent with Dr. Spurgeon's contract.
And then leadership, I have that for the mileage.
And we leave those values alone, but we're going to get a quarterly report.
Correct.
Someone needs to,
I made a motion, I
You
just
did-
haven't heard a second.
did you make a motion? Did you actually make a motion? Maybe I didn't hear it.
So I'll start again.
Yes, please.
I would move that we approve the quality life grandfathered in employees, for employees who have it, other than ones that would move to the, family care coverage, and that we would also approve the leadership stipend, including mileage reporting as discussed, on a quarterly basis, for the board, with the $10,000 and $7,000 new amounts that we have.
And you included the elimination of the,
Yeah, I'm not approving the cell phones, so that would just.
that's
die.
part of your motion.
Yep.
Okay. All right, is there I don't want to get a call at 9 o'clock in the morning that something went wrong with the board meeting, so I'm just clarifying. So, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Ms. Brown?
Ms. Bussum? Aye. Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Straka?
Aye.
Mr. Pingarelli?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, moving on to item 14. Discussion and consideration of a motion to approve 301 employee compensation.
Okay, Dr. Pingarelli, Chairperson Pingarelli, before you, you have the stipends for our 301 funds for our instructors, counselors, and career coaches. Mr. Welch has met with the group twice in the last month. There'll be a report that'll be coming to you next month. But this is the recommendation from teachers that have to approve it. Mr. Welch has done it on a yearly basis, but these are the recommendations for this coming year for those three categories. The new ones that are on here are the Teacher Induction Academy. There's 5 steps in training our new teachers when they come in. We require them in the new contract that they have to participate. So we have a $500 for each of the progressional steps that they make. Example, our CNC teacher's never been in a classroom, and he's gonna start from ground zero on lesson planning, scope and sequence, how to manage the lab, and effective instruction. So since they're instructors, we wanted to compensate them for that. The lead aviation instructor, designated mechanic examiner, that's someone that prepares all of the students in the aviation program for taking the FAA exam. National Technical High School Association, that's a program that we want to move forward with for our staff here. Program leads, we want to establish in the different categories and different pathways. Dual enrollment is one. There's a lot of work that goes into dual enrollment with the community colleges. And this isn't for every instructor, those that participate in it. And then summer conference, if you go and do a presentation, because we believe we want to lead out. And Dr. Spurgeon, since he's a year ago came in, he said we need to be leading, so we need to be teaching and performing when we go to summer conference. If someone prepares a presentation, delivers it, we wanted to compensate them for $500. So our recommendation from the committee, this doesn't come from just Stephen, he facilitates it, but this came from our instructors, our counselors, and our career coaches. So with that, we can take questions, but administration recommends approval.
So which ones were the new ones? Or which
The
ones?
Teacher Induction Academy, the National Technical High School Association. We're gonna establish some program leads because we've had discussion over the last 4 or 5 years about leading the medical system. We have 5, 6, 7 of those teachers. Do we need someone to lead that group? Dual enrollment is new and summer conference is new.
Yeah, so just want to clarify, the National Technical High School Association is actually the National Technical Honor Society. That's our version of the honor society that K-12 comprehensive school districts have. So that would be just one person per campus that would actually oversee the National Technical Honor Society. Again, that's our attempt to take us to another level of an academic institution and allow students to participate in the National Technical Honor Society as a CTE organization.
And then were there, the ones that were not new, are these the same numbers as last year or were there increases?
The ones that are not new are the same as the year ago.
Okay.
And Dr. Erb, are these, so we have the 301 performance pay, so the additional categories below, are those add-ons to the performance pay?
Great question. CTSO is not an add-on, it's been there.
Okay.
The work-based learning has always been there.
Okay.
The Teacher Induction Academy is new. Lead instructor for aviation has been there. The DME has been there. The National Technical is brand new. And the program leads that Stephen wants to establish is new, and the dual enrollment and summer conference. Those are new.
So there's 5 new.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. Chairperson Strack, governing board members, Dr. Spurgeon, thanks for the question. The performance pay portion has increased. So going back to, we had some conversations in December, I think, governing board member Ramirez, governing board member Straka talked a little bit about some increasing to performance pay. We have not increased performance pay since the original plan, so it's been over 10 years with these same amounts. So we convened a committee of teachers, counselors, career services over the last 2 months to meet to really ramp up the framework. They're gonna bring that framework to you next month. You'll hear from our teachers, our counselors, our career services that will present that framework in the performance pay portion. But the performance pay portion did move from 3,000 historically to 6,500 is what you see in front of you now. And that really, following Dr. Spurgeon's leadership, is to allow employees to earn up to 10% of the base pay, which is in line with our member districts. So most districts, performance pay, and I think Tracy's online and can speak to this as well, is between $11,000 and $12,000. So our performance pay will be at $6,500, but then teachers have the opportunity through some of the things that Dr. Erb has presented tonight to increase that, such as CTSO, which is not new, work-based learning, working with advisory councils, working with externships to put students out in industry. Those are opportunities that they can increase that 6,500 as well.
And follow my thinking here is in business and industry, there are so many other opportunities for those employees to earn extra money over time and such like that. So we're trying to set up a system where there's other opportunities where they're putting in the work, they're actually receiving some value, for the hours that they spend. Because for an example, CTSO is just many hours of preparation, and that the 2,500 probably still doesn't even cover what the number of hours that they're actually working. And so we're trying to set up those opportunities for teachers to be able to be paid for, like in business and industry, some more opportunities for them to earn some extra funds and to be paid for and to make $8 or $10 an hour by the number of hours they work. If they're making $1,000 or whatever. So we're just trying to move in that direction so we give teachers the opportunity to at least earn a little bit more for the work they're actually already putting in.
So thank you, Dr. Spurgeon. I have a number of questions. So for both Mr. Welch and Dr. Erb. So performance pay, and I've been to a lot of different board meetings and districts. So tell me about performance pay. Do all instructors, counselors, career coaches, do they typically get 100% of performance pay? Or what? Give the board a sense of the range, because, and excuse me if I have a bias, but this question has been asked by other districts, and administration has replied that 98 to 99% of everyone gets the top pay. So I'd like to know where West-MEC is.
Yeah, Chairperson Pingarelli, thank you for the question. It's a good question that we've had the opportunity to discuss before. Our classroom site funds is very different than your standard districts. In most districts, most of the plan is really developed around the state testing. And whether you're a CTE teacher, a language arts teacher, or a fine and performing arts teacher, everyone gets the same amount if students score so well on either reading, math, or literature and stuff. So it's a shared amount, which is why so many of them get that same amount. West-MEC is very, very different. Our approach has been very different from the beginning under this board's leadership to where it is highly individualized. So the bulk of $301 or performance pay dollars in the West-MEC district is tied to our program assessments. Those program assessments are built with industry partners to represent the fundamental knowledge needed for entry-level success when students leave us. But that is different for every single program. So an aviation test doesn't look like a medical assisting test, which doesn't look like a vet tech test. So there are differences built in throughout. In addition, the next biggest chunk of performance pay is credentialing, industry credentialing. That also is highly individualized across our district because of the credentials that are obtained. So that accounts for us having a much wider range. So we are between the low end of the range was 45%. We had a teacher that qualified for 45%, up to, of course, 100%. We've had teachers that got up to 100%. I would tell you that 50% of our teachers did earn 80% or greater last time.
Okay.
But we are nowhere near the scale of that 98%.
Okay. But you would generally indicate that it is merit-based. You look at metrics and the board has confidence that that performance pay is based on meritorious performance.
Yeah, it is absolutely merit-based. As a matter of fact, this performance-based structure has to be built by the participants and then voted on. So right now, across our campuses, teachers are voting on the plan that you're going to see. So you're going to see that performance pay plan and the merits of that plan next month, where they'll present that framework to you. But in addition, and Tracy could speak to this, it is something that we are audited on every year. So when the auditors come in, they pick the files and they make sure that there were clear goals and that we have the artifacts to substantiate the goals were met if it was paid out. And this has been an audit file where there has never been a finding in the history of West-MEC.
So I have a question on that. If the teachers are setting the goals, we know that, or the metrics, we know that people can sandbag. And so most people do not set a goal, you always set a goal above what you're capable of. I would always set goals for performance of, I want you to get to 90%. If that many people are getting to 100%, our goals aren't high enough. How can we assure that the people setting the goals are setting challenging goals?
Yeah, thank you. This was a great conversation over the 2 meetings we had with them. On right or wrong, in statute, it is very clear that we cannot set the goals. The goals are set by the teachers, counselors, and career services. So that is very clearly defined in statute, that they're the ones who build the framework. We are allowed to provide guidance as administration, and we can participate in it, but they set the goals and they vote on it. We have those discussions with teachers, showing, trying to get them to, we've used the term around stretch goals. Chairperson Streka, or Ms. Streka, because you've talked about that before with our teachers about stretch goals and the importance of that. The area where we really see that happening is on our program assessments. I would tell you that this was an area where I don't have the data in front of me, but I'm going to tell you probably no more than 35% of teachers reach 100% of that, because you'll see it's a pretty rigorous framework when you look at that next month.
Because what I would expect on a model like this is roughly 25% get 75% or more of the compensation, 25% get 25 or less of the compensation, and everybody else is in the middle. If we're too far north of 75%, we haven't established strong enough goals. If we're too many below 25%, it's too stringent. So that's, I guess, my challenge to you. But I know we're kind of getting off track on this, but and again, it sounds like you're having those conversations, but we shouldn't have a lot of people above 75%, maybe 25%.
Thank you. Thanks for the comments, and we'll continue to incorporate them. And it's a privilege to be with such a high-performing district where we see them reach those goals. You know, and some of those goals, as Dr. Spurgeon has encouraged us with credentialing, right? To credentialing to be nation leaders in credentialing, and we are up above the 86%. So at some point, it starts to get kind of challenging to say, okay, you got to be 90%, 95%, but we'll continue those conversations.
Thank you. So I don't believe we have a motion for this yet.
I have a couple more questions if I could.
Okay,
Unless somebody else has questions, I'll.
Okay, Mr. Straka.
I just want to understand what are, like, work-based learning, advisory council participation. Who is doing this? When are they doing it? Give me an example. And I want to walk through each one because here's what my question is. If they are on the clock, meaning they're being paid, I think based on what Susan Siegel has said, that could be construed as a gift of public funds unless there's additional duties. So advisory council participation, I would see leading an advisory council because that's additional duties. Participating in advisory council when you're on the clock is a gift of public funds, I think, is what Ms. Siegel. So could you walk us through each one and explain what are the additional duties and are they on the clock or?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Strecker. For some of these, it's kind of a split. For some of these, they are on the clock, but they are definitely additional duties. So advisory councils would be one that, yep, they participate in them, but they do much more than participate. We have some teachers that co-chair them with industry folks. In addition to that, we have other teachers that regularly, prepare presentations and present at advisory councils. They create meaningful ways for advisory council members to participate, like in mock interviews or those types of things. We have other activities which would be off the clock, where teachers outside of their contract time are contacting industry partners to participate in advisory councils and building those advisory councils. This, as well as the CTSO one, has rubrics that really delineate where they fall, whether they get 100% or 25% of that amount. And we will definitely have our teachers ready to kind of speak to that when we come in next month, as well as showing you that framework that you'll see with the performance pay, those rubrics.
What about Induction Academy? Are the teachers?
Yeah, the Teacher Induction Academy, this one actually is, sorry, Doctor.
That's right.
This one's not a new one. This one has been a consistent one over the last 5 years with the performance pay plan. And it is PD that our teachers participate in, and then teachers have to, outside of class time, teachers have to incorporate what they learned in the PD into a lesson. They either build a lesson with it, they plan the instruction and deliver the instruction, they do some reflection works with it. So this really compensates their time to go on a Saturday or whatnot, take some PD classes, and then incorporate that into the work. One of the other things they do is they film their teaching with a coach, and then they reflect about that teaching as a way to continually grow their instructional set.
And that's off the clock then?
It again is either extra duties on the clock or it's off the clock. Yeah, their reflections, some of their lesson plan development, those are things that they're doing on the weekends or outside of contract hours.
So go ahead. So for summer conference presentation, I assume that one would be employee or an instructor would do that on the clock, right?
as well as off the clock.
Yeah, that's a brand new one, and that was really to, incentivize folks wanting to, to give them the carrot to go out and present, to be leaders in CTE in our state and to present at summer conference. So that much of that work would happen off the clock because they are creating that proposal to present at summer conference. And then some of summer conference currently happens outside of our calendar days. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is currently off of contract time. And then Wednesday, the award session is when our teacher contracts start. So most of that time would be off the clock.
And then could you just keep going? Lead aviation instructor, I get that, that's additional duties.
So-
Designated medical.
Yeah, the DME is something that we have had for, 7, 8 years in the district, but we have moved it to 301. So this was an area where Dr. Spurgeon has freed up M&O to pay for other things or to allow us to be good stewards of the money and use $301 instead. So the DME, it is our designated maintenance examiner, and they're the person who tests students in their oral and practical. So either high school or our adult students who finish aviation can, instead of having to go and find a DME elsewhere or drive across town to Chandler Gilbert, they can test right here with us. So that's the DME. The lead aviation is also been with us many years, but just recently moved to 301.
That's additional duties, so I don't have a question there.
Very much additional duties that the FAA requires. Yeah, DME is usually on Saturday after hours, after we're done serving students. It's always after time.
National Technical High School, I would see that as additional duties, that's kind of like a CTSO. Program lead.
Program lead is similar to, in traditional districts, this is similar to a department chair, which is a structure that all districts have. This would frequently being on the clock, but it would be additional duties assigned to them. So they'd be responsible, for instance, I talked earlier about our program assessments, making sure each one of our program assessments are validated by industry. So this teacher, whoever that program lead is, they would meet with those industry partners to go through the test to make sure, yep, this represents entry-level readiness. They would go through any of our rubrics, skills assessments to make sure it represents readiness in the field. So it's duties like that that really validate our curriculum and assessments, that it's grounded in current practices. We want to make sure that we stay up with current practices, so having somebody routinely doing that makes sure we keep ahead of the curve, especially in those dynamic areas, such as some of the medical lab areas, such as IT security, where it's important to really keep your finger on the pulse of those trends.
And they're still teaching the same amount of time as everybody else and still doing the same amount of office hours as everybody else?
Yes.
Dual enrollment?
Dual enrollment has really ramped up the higher learning accreditation that accredits the community colleges has really ramped up what they require of dual enrollment instructors. So our instructors, on their own time, they have to do a lot of extra work for the college, and this compensates them for that extra work that they're doing to ensure that our students have that pipeline into the college.
So if they're doing the work for the college, why are we compensating them? Shouldn't the college be doing that?
Yes, they should be doing that. But this is an ongoing conversation. I'll tell you, Dr. Spurgeon has been a fearless leader, meeting with our college multiple times, saying this, making this point, but the fact is that they don't. Maricopa County Community Colleges continues to cut support, not enhance support, and we don't want to see students, suffer.
Well, Dr. Spurgeon, next time you meet with them, you can tell them the board has the same concern.
And of course, they're concerned because their enrollment
Yeah, and then summer conference presentation, I'm okay with that as long as it's an 11-month employee. But if it's a 12-month employee, they're getting, we're paying for their professional development. They're at a conference instead of working. To that one, I think it should be restricted to 11-month only employees.
And the Classroom Site Fund plan, with the exception of career service coaches, there are 4 career service coaches in the district, Everyone else that falls under classroom site fund is 11 month, so we can make that exception.
I would think that's the only one that, to stay out of the gift of public funds question, I just would think it's in our best interest to do that. That's all the questions I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any other members' questions?
Yes, Mr. Welch, I do have, I might have missed the detail, but going back to the designated mechanic examiner, so we've had that for several years, have we been paying them a stipend from a different fund or?
Correct, we've been paying them currently out of M&O and not classroom site funds, but we've moved them to, the proposal is to move them to classroom site funds to not impact M&O.
And is the dollar amount the same, or is it stipend amount the same?
That is the same, both the lead aviation and the DME have not changed, those are consistently the same.
Members, other questions? Okay, so I believe we do need a motion and a second to move this item forward.
I want to make a motion to approve the stipends, 301 stipend approval as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, there has been a motion to approve by Mr. Ramirez and a second by Garcia. Thank you both very much. Any further discussion? I have one comment before going to the vote. Is that, Mr. Welsh, you mentioned, that teachers, instructors get together to review these compensations, and I think the same is true for salary. Is there any statutory reason why the public can't be part of that council or discussion group, or even industry, that this might be, why are we putting ourselves in a box? And you don't have to answer the question. I give it as a consideration for West-MEC.
And I would just say, I'm not aware of any statutory reason why we couldn't do it, so I think we absolutely could make that available.
Okay, and I will investigate that too, if there is some statute that prohibits that. Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. If not, Ms. Brown.
Ms. Guzzo? Aye. Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Straka?
Aye.
Dr. Pingarelli?
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Welch. Okay, so we are on item 15. I'm just trying to, my bifocals are trying to move my eyes here a little bit between my computer. Discussion and consideration of a motion to approve fiscal year 2023 ESSER 3 stipends. And Dr. Erb, we really do need to get you a seating arrangement. You're okay, you don't need.
Mrs. Rockwell is going to cover this item for you.
Okay.
And I'll answer questions if there's other questions.
Okay, well then, Ms. Rockwell, you're on the board.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Pingarelli, governing board members, Dr. Spurgeon. So the governing board approved for 2 stipends to be paid to employees through the ESSER 3 fund. One stipend and a 3% retention stipend off of the employee's base pay was paid in August of 22. The second stipend is set for a 4% stipend off of the employee's current base pay to be paid at the end of June. One thing that is a restriction within the ESSER 3 funds in regards to paying a stipend is that no one employee can receive more than $5,000 for the stipend. And we currently have 39 employees that this would exceed the $5,000. And it equates about $45,000, and we would need to pay for this out of the M&O fund. And so we bring to the board the request to be able to do that because it was approved that all of the stipend be paid for out of ESSER 3, and ESSER 3 does not allow this to happen.
Have we run this by legal counsel?
Yes.
And what was her response of?
Her response was that it needed to come to the governing board for their approval before we pay the stipend in June. That we needed to let the governing board be aware that what had been approved prior was not allowable and that we needed to make this adjustment.
So the adjustment we're making is we're taking some money out of the ESSER 3 and we're just moving M&O. So isn't this really a budget item? And it's just we're doing M&O instead of ESSER for about $45,000. Is that what I understand?
Correct. But since the governing board did approve the stipend during last year's stipend approval for all of this to be paid out of ESSER, and that it's not allowed to be paid out of ESSER, we needed to bring that to the governing board for their review and approval before this final payment is made.
But see, the item on the agenda just says approval of ESSER 3 stipends. We're really not approving ESSER 3 stipends, we're approving the contract stipends with M&O funds. Can we, is this agenda item written properly so we can do this? Because I was interpreting this, we were just approving an override over $5,000, the way the agenda's written.
So based on the agenda item that I submitted and the supporting documentation, it shows that this needs to be paid for out of different funds.
So, I don't see that, I just see that it's, well, it says M&O, but.
So let me get clarification here too. So, Ms. Rockwell, so I understand, so let me get clarification. So there are so many employees that have exceeded the $5,000 threshold, is that correct? But not all employees?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So those employees that have not exceeded it, that portion we can still use ESSER 3 funds, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so the remainder would have to be out of, those employees that have exceeded would have to be out of our regular M&O.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clarification.
Dr. Pingarelli, to Mr. Straka's question, I think the first item there, the request is for the governing board to approve ESSER retention stipends exceeding $5,000 allowed per employee from the maintenance and operation funds. So it's, to me, that's pretty clear there. We can pay out of the ESSER.
I would say we should go ahead and prove it. The only caveat is, can we just run this agenda item by legal counsel and make sure, because I didn't see M&O in item number 15, and we are using M&O funds, and so just make sure that we are doing this legally and don't have to come back and do a correction next month.
I did, Mr. Stroke, I did run the agenda, as I do now, all agendas through our board attorney. So it was reviewed. It may have been missed, so we should double check. But I agree with that assessment. Just let's double check.
I would say just approve it with the final approval from legal counsel that the agenda and the memo are okay. And that would be my motion.
Okay, that would be good.
Trying to move us on.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
I'll
I have
second
and we have a second from Mr. Ramirez. Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Ms. Prism?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Straka?
Aye.
Dr. Pingarelli?
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so now here we go to the big one, item 16. Discussion and possible consideration of a motion to approve the annual health benefits. And I'm trying to read the rest of it. Frank, can you back that up?
Yeah, possible consideration of motion to approve annual health benefits, which include medical, vision, dental, life, and AD&D insurance.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Erb.
Okay, for Dr. Pingarelli and members of the board, for Mrs. Busam and Mr. Garcia, let me give you a little background. So I'm going to go through the presentation here. Continuing board members have seen some of this information, but I'm going to go through it with, and then maybe when I get to the end, we'll back up and take questions. Okay? This slide shows you the premium increases over the past years. We have had increases of 15 and 16% in the past, a couple of times, but over the last 4 or 5 years, this has been our increase on a yearly basis to the premiums. The copay plan, this increase this year is 74. The value plan is 61, which will be transitioning into our family plan that was approved in January, and the HDH plan increased 50. So the increase for the 23-24 school year is $115,188. In the board packet, it might be more than that, but that included all of the family coverage, and presently, we don't pay for this family coverage. But when we receive that 7% increase, it includes all of the employees' families, spouses, and children that are covered in there. So I backed that cost out because presently that's paid by the employee. Next slide shows you the number of employees that are participating in each of the plans and the number of spouse, children, and family that we have in those plans. The copay plan has 70 of our employees.
Dr. Erb, could you just go back one
Yes.
slide? I wanted to capture that in my brain, because I don't have it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the copay plan has almost half of our employees in it, 70 of them.
That's okay.
This plan
I can see it now.
has a maximum out of pocket of $5,080, and the family is $10,160. In this plan, the employee pays a copay, and then under this plan, they cover it at 100%. I sent all those plans home to all of the board members. It had 22-23 on it because the board hasn't approved 23-24, so we didn't want to change the date on them, but they'll be on the insider for our employees to see. Kairos, the one provider that did turn in a proposal, did not have a plan that fell under the copay plan. So if the board decides tonight not to stay with Asbate and Meritain as our provider, then these 70 employees would have to go to a different plan. And in all of the Kairos's plans, there's a deductible for every plan. This one does not have a deductible. And the other plans from Kairos all have co-insurance up to the maximum out-of-pocket. So that would be different from the plans that we currently have. So you'd have to take the cost of having a deductible and then the co-insurance of 20 to 30% in their plans. This here shows you the difference between the Asbate and the Kairos core plan. They're pretty comparable, except for those two items, out-of-pocket expenses and a co-insurance. So with this, you can see that the difference in costs is $44. Over a 12-month period, it's $528. We have 29 employees that are currently in this plan, and it's about $15,312 less in premiums. When you go to the HDHP, comparable, they're both $1,500, and so the difference is $64.50. Over 12 months, it's $774. There's 50 employees in there. It's about $38.70. So the differences in the cost is about $54,000.
Yeah, what I look at on that there, on the HDHP, the maximum out-of-pocket for a single person, $4,500 to $3,500, and for a family, it goes down from $9,000 to $6,500. That's $2,500 on a family for maximum out-of-pocket. That's a significant amount of money. And it's $60 a month less.
Okay, so that's the difference right now in the plans, just so we keep in context as we go through. The retirees, right now I think we have 2 that are on there. The retiree plan is significantly higher. Kairos's plan is significantly higher. Let me go back one. One is right. than our ASBATE current plan. And when the retiree pays the cost of the plan. Prescriptions outside of the preferred, ours are under the generic, ours is 15, Kairos is 10, but the other three under the preferred, non-preferred, specialty are all higher. The Delta Dental, which is not part of ASBATE, we went out 4 years ago, I believe, transitioned from ASBATE's dental plan because we had over a $20,000 savings, so we transitioned to the Delta Dental. The Delta Dental and the vision plan for Kairos is more expensive. And under supplemental plans, we use AFLAC. We have 4 of the plans that are there, and we don't provide prepaid legal identity theft or pet insurance. But these are all supplemental and are paid by the employee. West-MEC does not pay these. The differences between the plans, no plan covers 100% after the copay, so we have 70 employees. The board didn't want to continue with ASBATE, that we'd have to force to the core plan and Kairos. And we would probably go from the 3 plans to the 2 plans. Kairos has 2 plans that have deductibles that have to be met yearly. And also for additional family members, there's additional copays that have to be met. Requires to pay 20% co-insurance out of pocket until they reach the maximum of $4,500. ASBATE's out of pocket for the value plan is $4,000 with no co-insurance. Kairos out of pocket for HDHP is $3,500. ASBATE's is $45,000. Kairos HDHP would have a reduced HSA contribution. I would estimate it to be about $1,100 because we take it from the core, the difference between the premium and the difference in the HDHP, which we've done with our current plan. It would be a change with some of our current employees that are in the HDHP because we have 2 categories because we grandfathered some of the employees in with the HSA. Some of our employees receive about $3,600. Other new employees get about $1,100, $1,200. ASBATE's current vision and dental are less than Kairos. ASBATE's life insurance covers base up to $100,000. Kairos does $50,000 for employees, $200,000 for administrators, and it reduces at ages 65 and 70. So our recommendation is to remain with ASBATE for the 23-24 school year. Go out for a request for proposals because we didn't go out until after the board meeting in January. We had 4 inquiries, but only 1 responded to it. This is something that needs to start in August or September of the new year. A board member suggested maybe we hire a consultant. We've used the Siegel Company in the past, and it wasn't very expensive to use them. They came in and helped process through the different proposals because there was 5 in there that came in, and we had to figure out which ones best fit West-MEC. So ours would be go out in August, provide enough time so medical providers could provide that coverage to us. This will provide enough time to solicit from West-MEC staff in the fall and ask questions, visit the campuses. What do you really want in a program? I know one of the board members, Mr. Strick, has talked about a cafeteria plan. We may not be big enough for that, but it'd be good to talk to a consultant to say, is that something we want to consider? And then bring back the recommendation to the governing board next February. So that's currently what our recommendation is for the 23-24 school year. And at that time, when we bring it back for the review, if the board wants to change providers, that's the pleasure of the board. With this, one other thing, just remember that in our plans currently, the value plan becomes the basic plan. And Dr. Spurgeon presented the information to you in January, so all of our current employees that are in West-MEC right now that want to move to the value plan, in his proposal, we put funding in there for 41 employees to bring their families onto the family plans that would be paid for by West-MEC. Also part of that proposal is to have coverage for dental and vision. And if you remember his presentation, and I have a copy of it here, we moved significant teachers, those that qualify under the 301 funds. We can take all of their insurance benefits out of 301. We can take dental and vision out of 301. so that it was a major over, I want to say over $2 million when you total those together, savings in the M&O. So that will be part of the approval. I imagine if the board goes with the Kairos plan, then the core plan would become our family plan. But with the time and where we are right now, to get it out, have an open enrollment, it would be pretty challenging, pretty difficult. We've had conversation with some of the board members. Hey, let's make sure we go out in September or August, make sure we process this, make sure, and if one of the governing board members wanted to be involved in it, you could be part of the committee and benefits committee and participate with it. So with that, I will stand for questions. Or Dr. Spurgeon, if he has anything to add.
One of the things you didn't mention, Dr. Erb, is the Kairos plan. It's the final rate as of today,
Right.
but it could go up, so it's not even the final rate. It's a floating rate based on the most current information they have today.
Right. I didn't provide this in the handout, but this was in your packet. If you go to the middle part, they wanted to know the large claims over 15,000. The two here, and this is not in our last quarter, we have two that are 142,000, 122,000, 73,000, 43. Those are individual claims from July of last year to June 30th of this year. So that's what the providers that come in, they want to know what the health is of your employees. They take all that into consideration. The best and final, they wanted that information. We haven't received it yet. So with this current one, that's the bid that they gave us. So they could even raise the prices that I showed you presently tonight. So that's why our recommendation is to stay with Meritain, implement the process early next year, see if we can get 4 or 5 providers in here and see if we can find a program that accommodates our employees, covers the family insurance that was approved in January, that will benefit employees. So with that, we can stand for questions or if Dr. Spurgeon has anything to add.
Thank you, Dr. Erb. Members, questions, comments, concerns?
We talked earlier about vision. The utilization report you shared with me the other day, 37%. I was on the vision plan where I paid the whole thing myself, and it was clunky. Every time I wanted to make a claim, I had to take my receipt, mail it in, and you have to mail it in with a certain number of days, and you get $40 back. It's a bad plan. If we're putting in 15,000, our employees are getting 5,000 back. I'm not seeing value there. Why did you recommend to continue it? And I can tell you most corporations do no longer pay for vision. And if you talk to optometrists, they'll tell you they can get you about the same price as you can get on your vision plan.
Yeah, in the summary you had in the board packet that came out, our vision plan, so far we paid in $14,725 and we used about $5,198. And so this has been an item that Mr. Streck has brought up in the past. Should we cover vision insurance or not? But as part of the overall plan, to change right now, the board wanted to take it out. But that wouldn't be my recommendation until they have a chance to review all of it and go through it for the 23-24 school year.
And definitely with more than one vendor.
I raised this earlier, and so I'd like to, we talk about our different stakeholders, employees, staff, or students, staff, taxpayers. The last several years, the taxpayers have paid 100% of the increase. What is the reason that we continue to not hold the taxpayers? I feel like we're not holding them in any regard. We're just asking them for 100%. What's in the logic of that? Why didn't we not think about maybe moving the percentage up to 4%?
Okay, Dr. Pingarelli and Mr. Straka, if the board was, for the history of it, before the board covered, or the organization covered 100%. 4 years ago, we went to 2%. We call it skin in the game. One of the board members said, I think employees should have a little bit of cost in their medical plan. We went again to 3% the following year. Mr. Streka's comment is, okay, if we stay with the plan, should employees have a little bit more skin in the game of 4% or 5%? I guess my question would be, the board approved family insurance because our employees, we're gonna be spending, if only half of those employees take the family plan, that funds will be supported, dental and vision and the family plan will be provided by West-MEC, by the governing board. You voted on that in January. So if the board tonight wants to increase it for 1 year and place additional on an employee, that's the pleasure of the board, but we've taken away the self-stipend tonight and we're taking away some other things that we've had in place. But it's the pleasure of the board if you wanted.
Dr. remind me, in January, we did approve the 3%.
Correct.
And so, I mean, that was voted on. In fact, Mr. Garcia and I had a discussion on that in January when we made that. So,
I think Mr. Streka's question, Dr. Pingarelli, is should we increase that for a year to go to 4 or 5%?
Well, and it's not so much that, it's where was the consideration of the taxpayer? Because right now, I did not hear any consideration of the taxpayer. And what I'm somewhat frustrated with is, we have this conversation, and Dr. Spurgeon, you know, we talked about this. We have had this, we're gonna go out to bid, and I've heard this for 6 years. Our cost for an employee is roughly $12,000 a year. If you go back and look at that survey, it was $7,000 for everybody else. We're well above, and there doesn't seem to be, I'm not hearing anything of, you know, we have a duty to the taxpayer, and so I'm not hearing that. But I don't wanna increase it above 3%. What I really wanted to hear is, this is what we considered for the taxpayer, and this is why. But I have heard nothing, and so I would ask as we move forward, we consider all of our stakeholders, not just the staff, not just the employees, but the taxpayers that pay our bills, because we have to go back and explain to the taxpayers why we're doing this. I can tell you, if you look at the statistics, over 90% of the country is on an HDHP. That is their only choice. And that's pretty common. But I wanted to go back to that January, because I had a question, because I interpret this different than Ms. Rockwell did. The motion said it's a 3% contribution for their healthcare employees across the board. And the way I understood that to be is, it's 3% of individual, family, spouse, whatever we had. Am I interpreting that correctly? Because that's what I would understand is across the board.
Dr. Pingarelli, Mr. Streka, I think we had the conversation, it's 3% of the plan for the employee. It's not the family costs, which is not that expensive, but I think the proposal, you have it, we have it here, and Mr. Negorino has said, I think it's okay that the employee continues to pay 3% of whatever plan they choose. So, Dr. Spurgeon, I think we were on the same page there.
Really? Yes. So the way I understood it and the way I presented it is that we would remove the 3% for the individual, and then the board decided to come back and say, can we at least keep the 3%? And I think Mr. Miglerino said, okay, I can live with that. And so the 3% was kept for the individual employee only. That's how I remembered it, that's how I presented it.
And then the other part of that was, after that, we were gonna bring forward something in February on how we were gonna implement it, because if we pay and we allow an employee to put their spouse and their children, how do we know they can't be covered somewhere else? I don't recall seeing that memo, did we?
Well, we haven't asked our employees yet of where they could be covered because we haven't approved the plan. Once we approve the plan, I have the summary that I think Mr. Garcia asked for of how we're gonna educate our employees. I did a presentation today at the campus. We will go out and do the presentation. This is the chart that the employees will get. It shows all of their contributions of the 3%, what it costs for them. It'll be a little different for the value plan because now we're paying for, as an organization, the value plan for spouse, family, and children. We don't know yet how many are going to transition from HDHP, from copay to HD, but they only can participate in the value plan for family.
Why, because we talked about this, and why are we not allowing them also to keep HDHP in the family plan?
Oh, they could do it if they want to stay there, but the recommendation is that the value plan became the plan of choice to cover family.
They could stay there.
They can stay there, it's not that they're gonna lose anything.
I guess, because because, you know, we talk about not taking things away from employees. Some employees don't have a lot of healthcare costs, they choose the HDHP because they have an HSA contribution and they have a family. And so now we're forcing them to lose their HSA contribution and move to this other plan. You know, what Mr. Garcia was talking about earlier, we're making choices for employees. So my thought would be, and I have a motion, and I wrote it out because I think, you know, we should keep it at 3%. But we need to consider the taxpayers in the future. All employees can choose the value plan, and I'm adding in the HDHP. And they can pay up for the copay gold. For a family, they may cover the staff to select the value, the value plan or the HDHP, and the district should pay for either one. Because I want to make sure we don't force someone to go off the HDHP if that's their choice, just because they can't get family, because family coverage is free on the other one. The employees will remain at 3%, and this is where I get confused, is across the board. So across the board just means on the employee cost, not the family cost.
Correct, that's correct.
Okay, so we should clarify that a little differently. We need to do some serious soul searching on vision, and if we're at 37%, a justification of why we should recommend to stay on that. Because year after year, it's less than 50%. We're not getting our bang for the buck. I was on it 3 years and it was a bad experience. I think the reason employees aren't using it, it's difficult to use. We should look for something else. Or compare what other companies are doing, which I would find, wouldn't be surprised if they're no longer paying vision. This needs to be a priority for next year, meaning that this needs to be one of the superintendent's goals. So my motion is that this becomes one of the superintendent's goals, health plan review for next year. And so, as I talked about earlier, the goal should include a benefit to the taxpayer of at least a 15% reduction of the employee individual cost on the new plan. I know Tracy talked about ways to negotiate to get things down. She's had some experience for this, so I think she will be your lead on reducing the cost for a new health plan for employees for July of 2024.
Mr. Stricker, can I stop you just for a second? How can I be accountable for something I can't control?
Well, it's negotiation.
Well, what I'm saying is that you're setting a standard of 15% reduction. What if that's not possible?
We'll find that out and review it. But
then
we have to, you know, again,
Wait, hold on, gentlemen.
we've talked about setting goals. I have to draw a number in the sand. It's like when you make a budget. I have to think of what's achievable. I know that we're paying $12,000 and other districts are paying $7,000. That is roughly a 60% reduction. I'm asking for 25% of the variance between us and other districts. I think that's achievable. I actually think you could probably hit 50%.
Yeah. Mr. Strickland, so I know this is a long motion. I'm going to, multiple subjects in this motion I'm having a little problem with. I'm not saying that there can't be some sort of superintendent goal here, but I don't think it's appropriate to put it into this agenda item.
I think if we don't put it in here, it's gonna get lost.
My concern with that is that even part of the agenda? Would that be put us outside the agenda? It doesn't call for.
This is talking for healthcare costs.
Yeah,
So
but
we're talking about healthcare costs for next year and reaching a reduction for next year. So by doing that, it's a goal for the board. We talk about this every year, and we always kick the can to next year. And here we are for at least the 6th year, kicking the can to next year.
I can see it as a goal that we can set for ourselves, but approving the recommendation for the health insurance and setting new goals for the superintendent, I see that those are two completely separate, independent items.
I would agree with that. I don't mind having this put on as a future agenda item, as a goal, or we do this as a, a very soon goal, but I just don't like it in this agenda item.
Okay, so I'll remove it from the motion. So the other part is we need to implement a policy about this. If someone signs up their kid and they're over 18, as an experience, my daughter got her first job, it was $85 a paycheck, and she's like, Dad, can't I just stay on your health insurance? Because as a parent, you can keep your child on your health insurance till they're 26. We're paying it for free when they're out there working. That is not what this is intended for. So we haven't heard an implementation plan, so I would propose the following. HR will validate each person over 18 as either a full-time student or disabled and unable to work. This validation will be done in the first 15 days of each semester and completed no later than 30 days into each semester. HR will also validate each spouse is not eligible for coverage elsewhere. And this should happen in the same time frame as children. It will be the responsibility of each employee to get the appropriate paperwork to confirm each family member to HR. Any staff that does not provide and supply the appropriate documentation will pay the full cost of the additional coverage. If an employee violates the policy where they cheat on the system, then they should lose the family subsidy for the rest of the program year and then the next 12 months. So meaning that if they were found to cheat in February of this year, they wouldn't be eligible till July 1st of 2024. So the rest of this year and the next 12 months.
So I'd like to challenge that. Is that even ethical to ask someone what their other spouse is doing with their medical plan?
Yes.
So I disagree.
So
It's no one's business who I have as my
you,
medical plan and who my wife has.
I can tell you at American Express, if our spouse was eligible for other coverage, it was an additional $50 a paycheck on top of the cost that I paid to add her. If she was a smoker, it was an additional $50 more.
Sure.
So it's the same thing. If they're eligible for coverage, we should not be paying the coverage.
So I could tell you in the military, everyone gets TRICARE. And if they don't cover something on TRICARE, you're totally encouraged to go get it within your civilian world. So, people are trying to make ends meet. If one coverage isn't that good, we're talking about cost right now. We're not talking about what it entails. If it entails real not so good insurance, do you expect them not to go get other insurances?
But we asked for this, and this was part of the January agenda. This was approved to have a program to implement. Nothing's come forward, so this is my attempt. If you have a better one, we can live with this until they provide something better. But we agreed to have something in place by February. This is April. We don't have anything in place, and we can't have, because this is meant to help the family, not for the extended family. Johnny just started work, I want to cover him on my plan just to help him out. That is not what we wanted to do.
Well, that's one scenario. There's probably a billion we can come up with. But you're right, I do agree with what you just said. But we can nitpick this into many scenarios. My lifestyle is not like yours. And I probably got more kids than you. And I don't make the money that you have. So my life is not your life.
Right.
And we're a military family and you're probably not. So I can tell you that situations in our districts are very dynamic. And to really say we're going to do these, I agree that we need to have a plan. I'm not disputing that at all.
So
I just think
we
that's
can
not a good
adopt this plan and see if administration could come out with something better.
Yeah.
Because it's a simple thing to do. You can go to Social Security and show your wife isn't working because they update that quarterly. She's not working, she's eligible. You can show the student enrollment at a college, they're not eligible. You can have your doctor's note they're disabled. Those are all very simple things to get, but it closes the gap. I'm not asking for something complicated. It's something very simple, but it prevents us from, oh, hey, my wife has to pay $10 a paycheck, but it's free over at West-MEC, and it's similar coverage. I'll just put her on my plan and we'll save $10 a month. That's not what this is intended for. This is intended for the family that to get coverage where they didn't have coverage. This would be,
But she is family.
she is family, but she's already covered. The idea is not
She has
to,
the capability of being covered. She chooses whether or not she's going to be covered, or which plan she's gonna go with. You make that decision as a spouse, you make that decision as a head of your house. Yeah,
but
I mean,
if we, so here's the problem. If we cover that spouse that's eligible for elsewhere, and this is the reason American Express added that $50 claim, every person you add likely is going to be a high claimant, which means instead of a 7%, we could have a 10% increase next year, because you want to keep the people out that are eligible elsewhere. That's what I'm trying to do, because what we don't want to do is have escalating costs year over year, because we're covering everybody we shouldn't. I'm trying to keep our costs down long-term, because I'd rather have a 7% increase instead of a 17% increase.
right. No, I agree with that. I just don't agree with taking away someone's rights.
Mr. Straka, Mr. Garcia, admin and everyone, Mr. Straka, so with your motion, it's very lengthy. I concur, well, I've already, you've already agreed to take out the goal, and we'll deal with that as a separate item. I agree, though, with you on the eligibility requirements. Where the only place I'm a little bit concerned, and maybe this needs legal, is the teeth and the penalty. Can we do that?
It's essentially any other policy you would adopt. We could ask legal counsel.
I would certainly like, if the motion does pass, I would like a review of that.
I would add that legal counsel to approve or modify the teeth, as you put it, to a legal standpoint if it would.
If the motion should pass.
If this motion would pass, yes.
Dr. Fingarelli, I would agree with all of that, the legalities of it, we need to make sure we're on safe ground.
Yes, because I just don't want a mishap here. And because that puts the board, it puts administration, and it sends not the right messaging to our employees or to the community for that matter. I also, I don't think your motion included removing vision. While I agree with you on the fiduciary aspect.
I didn't remove vision.
I know you didn't, but I take your point very well, and that we should do a better job, I think, on vision. But eliminating it, I would really prefer not to. I would really aim, and I think that's the intent of Mr. Straka, is to find a plan that works and that's easy. Because our vision plan, as state employees, or I'm on my wife's, or when we're at GCU, it was very easy. It was extremely easy to have that work for us. So if we're not having that, then we have something wrong.
And if you want to have fun, ask your optometrist what they think about Warby Parker. Because you'll get an earful.
So we have a motion, it's rather lengthy, that we will have to give to Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Sorry, can you repeat the motion, please?
I should have made multiple copies. So the district shall pay the additional costs of the health plan, except the 3%. All employees may choose the value plan, and I'm adding HDHP. They may pay up for the copay gold as they do today. For family coverage, we'd allow the staff to select the value gold, that's the middle one, right? Or HDHP. We shouldn't take away the option from employees that they cover the family. Expense to remain at 3% across the board, meaning an individual 3% of the cost. This needs to be a priority for next year. I'll leave it at that. The implementation policy, this was what we were due in February. We need to have something. We can pass this, review it by legal counsel, and see if we can come up with something better, but HR is to validate each person over the age of 18. If they're under 18, there's no validation, they're automatically in. It's just when they can be, and they need to either be a full-time student or disabled and unable to work. This validation is done, and I just needed to establish a time frame. First 15 days of the semester, no later than 30 days of the semester. HR to validate spouse in the same time frame as the frequency of children. It'd be the responsibility of each employee to provide that information. HR cannot find that information. It's up to the employee. Registration of it at a college or high school, and your wife's SSA statement would suffice. And if a staff member doesn't provide the appropriate documentation, they pay the full cost. And if an employee violates the policy and found to be cheating, they would lose the family subsidy for the rest of the program year and the next program year. I mean, some policies say, and up to termination of an employee. I don't think I want to terminate an employee for violating a policy. So this is much less than firing someone.
Chairman Pingerelli, are we also gonna check with legal about our ability to ask those questions?
Yeah.
And then to ask the question of their eligibility, as well as to ask the question of, what's the second one?
Legal to validate they're eligible.
Then, Jack, you said there was a second one, I thought.
No, I was just clarifying the legal counsel. We need to take the motion, get it to legal counsel for the board and see what their thought is in the process.
And is your motion changing it from 3% for employee only to 3% for any insurance they
No,
take?
because that's what I was asking for the clarification. It says
So it's
3%.
For the employee.
Individual 3% of the total cost. So that would be, it's just when I went back through the minutes, because we had a lot of conversation, because we also said I was under the impression, we said, hey, this was a one-year test, that we would see if it really reduced turnover of staff. And so, because I remember Mr. Garcia and I, we said, hey, we expect this is a one-year test, we want to see if it really reduced turnover. And so that's my expectation as well. Because we're actually, it's always a one-year determination. So that's the motion.
And the district covers 100% of the family plan? Or HD, value plan or HDHP?
A value plan or HDHP. And the reason I say HDHP, I recently came off an HDHP, and because I don't have a plan enrolled with my HSA provider, they will not let my card go through to buy anything. I have to do a reimbursement on every medical expense right now.
So that is Mr. Strucker's motion. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I will make the second then. Is there further discussion?
No.
Okay. Ms. Brown?
Ms. Bosom?
I'll say aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Nay.
Mr. Ramirez?
Go with yes, just, I guess so long as we get the okay from legal counsel
Absolutely.
that we can proceed with this.
Mr. Straka?
Yes.
Dr. Pingerelli?
Yes.
With 4 yeses and 1 no, motion carries.
Thank you, members. Mr. Strucker,
I'm just gonna give this to,
Thank you so much.
can you turn the page for me?
oh, sure.
Thank you. So, we are almost done. So, West-MEC calendar events. So we have the West-MEC events, the recognition ceremony on June 2nd for the various campuses. And I think all members received that flyer. Please consider, it's very good for board members to attend. And please check in with Ms. Brown if you plan to attend, so she can coordinate. Conferences. we have the two conferences, and I think they're both listed in the agenda, and I will leave it at that. And then with discussion, number 18, discussion of future agenda items, and this is something that's very important. In the chair and in collaboration with the superintendent, will look at these items and try to agendize, as possible. Are there any agenda items?
I think bond, we want to come back and visit.
More detail? from
Remember,
Ms.
we met with the bond committee? and the
Yes,
bond-
I remember.
And to give people context is, years ago, we did a 20-year bond. And then when we did our second bond, it was a 10-year bond because the cost to the taxpayer was like $1.15 or something, but we paid it off in 10 years as opposed to 20. And so now we have, the 10-year bond will be done before the 20-year bond. And thinking of the future for West-MEC, there are opportunities where we could adjust our tax rate and not let it come down to buy out those latest years on the bond so that we could be debt-free earlier and just have more bond capacity at the next bond election is really what that is, the long and short of it. And it's something that I've been, well, Dr. Spurgeon, but even the previous superintendent knows, I've probably been talking about this for 3 years, so I'm happy to finally get it on an agenda.
Very good. Any other items, members? I know we're having a long night here. Okay, I have none, so we are at the end. A consideration of a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
No, I want to stay.
No.
A lively but very good discussion tonight. Thank you.